With a loud bang, the moment Duan Yun collided, his fist had already fiercely smashed out. The moment the fist hit the tree trunk, the entire tree, along with the figure, flew backward. But this tree was indeed peculiar. As it flew, its trunk immediately twisted and deformed. This twisting felt like a person dancing, and most of Duan Yun's fist power was strangely dissipated. Duan Yun didn't give it a chance to breathe, advancing with the blade once more. At this moment, the woman, who had always been as cool as moonlight, opened her mouth. As she opened her mouth, the sound she emitted was surprisingly fiery. "Blow the horn for me. Blow the horn for me. Humph." With the woman's voice, the trumpet sound and speech that had been floating around changed rhythm. Or rather, the rhythm of the strange flower tree she leaned on changed. The flowers on the tree twisted, branches whistled, creating a sound that tore through the air. At this moment, the branches of the flower tree became even more sinister and terrifying. If previously the branches were like a venomous whip, and the flowers on those branches would spit and attack, now the branches were more like relentless chain swords, with a trajectory that felt incredibly unpredictable and mysterious. In an instant, Duan Yun's offensive onslaught was completely stifled, and the moonlit woman on the flower tree no longer just vocalized. Her body twisted along with it. Accompanied by her fiery calls, Duan Yun suddenly felt like he had stumbled into a dance party, and the originally cool and elegant woman before his eyes was now dancing the most wildly. And look, at this moment, with a cracking sound, the colorful phoenix robe on her burst apart on its own, revealing the woman's inner camisole. At a glance, this woman, once as cool as moonlight, seemed to be wearing only an ochre camisole, singing "Blow the Horn for Me" while dancing. Ziyu, seeing this, couldn't help but curse. What a hussy! For a moment, her cool demeanor combined with seemingly rhythmic dance moves even made Duan Yun feel his step changed. Not good. I've fallen into her rhythm. Just as Duan Yun realized this, a branch had unexpectedly lashed out. Duan Yun blocked it with his blade, but this strike from the branch carried a bizarre spinning power, causing him to spin like a top. This kind of attack, though strange, could not hurt Duan Yun, for he was naturally skilled in spinning. 8-layered. Spring Rain. He even took advantage of the spinning to execute an 8-layered Spring Rain. Originally needing time to charge, the 8-layered Spring Rain shortened its preparation time thanks to this spin. The sword chi swirled like spring water, flying out in a spin. In an instant, the rotating Spring Rain blade energy shredded the branches ahead and still lingered, even further shredding the moonlit maiden's camisole. Power. Just as Duan Yun intended to seize the advantage to leave this contradictory woman defeated, his heart suddenly sped up, and he blocked with his blade. With a dull thud, the sound was muffled. The large carp, which had seemingly disappeared, had somehow appeared behind him, mouth open, releasing a sharp spike, thrusting towards him. Had he not reacted quickly, he would have likely been hit. Damn salted fish, resorting to sneak attacks? The large carp's strike was ferocious, and since Duan Yun could only hastily defend, the force propelled Duan Yun's and Ziyu's wings away. Duan Yun was also taken aback, but, as his body tilted, instead of straightening up, he immediately lay down, legs swinging wildly, turning into a phantom resembling the wind and fire wheel. The next moment, he transformed into an arc, flying close to the ground towards the carp's flank. 16 strange fists. Extreme hatred. Dharma Shaoqing had already noticed, following him to throw punches together. The fist power, larger than a casserole pot, frantically struck the large carp. Earlier, the large carp, having been rolled over by Duan Yun, was covered in opened wounds, and now, Duan Yun's fist power was most cunning, drilling into the carp's wounds. With a bang, Duan Yun and Dharma swung 4 punches together, blasting the gigantic carp, sending it rolling out and crashing half of the cave wall down. Immediately after, its dead fish eyes turned red, and it yelled, "I want to be a hero." When she pondered whether to peek forward, clap. "Damn it! Give me back my clothes." Duan Yun. I want to be a hero. This big carp seemed to have truly gained sentience, as the 5 words it spoke were in very standard Mandarin, even with a magnetic broadcaster's voice. It's too late to want to be a hero now. Young hero Duan didn't subscribe to the principle of putting down the butcher's knife and becoming a Buddha here. In his eyes, once evil was committed and discovered by a hero like him, it had to face the judgment of justice. The big carp not only launched a sneak attack but also crushed young hero's clothes. And by his standards, it deserved the extermination of the 9 clans. First, I'll send you on your way, then I'll kill all the fish eggs and fry here. 1,000 heroic fire lotus. Blossom! With a roar, Duan Yun's entire body seemed to be enveloped by flames. The heroic fire lotus bloomed around him, rotating, and even formed a flowing fiery cloak behind him. Flame fury. Fire fist. Bang, bang, bang. Duan Yun's fists transformed into phantoms, like streams of flowing fire cannons, directly smashing into the big carp's body. This big carp had already suffered significant injuries, and now with Duan Yun's counterattack it was like adding injury to injury. At this moment, heroic fire, with its keen sense, drilled into its wounds from all over its body. As Duan Yun unleashed his fire fist, its originally gray body suddenly turned bright red. Red from the inside out. The air was instantly filled with the thick aroma of fish meat. That was the smell of red-braised carp. The big carp, with its tough skin and thick blood, struggled frantically at this moment. Duan Yun and Ziyu used successive movement techniques to dodge. But the heroic fire ignited as soon as it touched, and the more it struggled, the more fiercely the heroic fire burned. In a short span of time, it cooked itself. At this moment it struggled to return to the water, but it was too late. Only to see Duan Yun, enveloped in heroic fire, descend from the sky, landing at its tail position, and said, "Trying to run? Ha!" With a boom, Duan Yun's true chi circulated throughout his body, muscles tensed, his whole physique forming a straight line. He grabbed the fish tail and swung it with all his might. "Horn girl, let's have some fish." The enormous red-braised carp was swung by Duan Yun. In Ziyu's elevated view, Duan Yun, with one foot on the ground, executed an all-out swing that was not merely a simple throw but more like a horizontal sweep in swordsmanship. That is to say, Duan Yun treated this giant carp like a sword and executed a horizontal sweep. Looking down from above, Duan Yun was surrounded by a gigantic burning sword arc, a spectacular sight. With a boom, the air ahead mixed with mist was shattered into pieces, turning vividly red. Even from quite a distance, Ziyu felt the intense heat. And the woman entwined with the tree had just endured a strike of 8-layered spring rain and was preparing to rise and counterattack, only to be met head-on with a red-braised big carp. At this moment, the woman with shredded clothing also struck. As the tree trunk and branches twisted, her body also twisted, and from behind her emerged branches like moonlight. These moonlit branches were unusual, with surfaces showing vein-like features, appearing very fleshy. These were precisely the branches she had used to suck human blood before. Bang! The branches intertwined, forming a braid, gripping the sweeping fish head. But Duan Yun's horizontal sweep was overwhelmingly powerful. The moment she caught the fish head, even though the flower tree roots beneath her had deeply pierced the ground, it still couldn't withstand the blow. The few clothes on her were burned clean. The flower tree's roots were uprooted, dragged horizontally across the ground, sending bricks flying, turning into dust. As the branches and roots snapped, the flower tree and the woman's balance on the ground became unstable. With a cry of "Ah!", the strange branches sprouting from her back snapped, but it had to be admitted that the force she brought with her unity with the tree was surprisingly great, managing to halt Duan Yun's horizontal sweep big carp. With a splash, as her blood-soaked hands loosened, the burning big carp flew to the side, and the woman and the tree staggered, nearly unable to stand. At this point, the woman panicked and lifted her head. Almost simultaneously, a ball of fire descended, bracing against her back. Who else could it be but Duan Yun? The next moment, Without any hesitation, Duan Yun's hands grasped her like iron hoops. If this woman was beautiful as the moonlight, now with only her undergarments left, she was dazzlingly beautiful, and at this moment, she transformed. Transformed into a burning moon. Because the one holding her was surrounded by heroic fire. With a snap, the weird branches connecting her to the flower tree were incinerated by the burning fire power. And in an instant, Duan Yun had lifted her off the ground. This lift soared 5 zhang high, making Ziyu's eyes go wide, exclaiming, "What's he doing?" Because the way Duan Yun held the woman and rose was truly pleasing to the eye. Ziyu nearly had an illusion that the two were immortal lovers from the skies, ascending together, leaving her behind. The next moment, just as this illusion evaporated, she was even more shocked, because at this moment, Duan Yun was already spinning with the woman, spinning wildly. The heroic fire on him enveloped both of them completely. Next, they ascended, rising to the highest point, bodies inverted, heads towards the ground, descending from the sky. Fire lotus smash. With a loud explosion, the ground shook, the lake water burst. The entwining fire power bloomed like a lotus flower, exceptionally dazzling. After some time, the heroic fire gradually dissipated. Duan Yun stood in the crater he had smashed out, wearing only underpants, breathing heavily. And at his feet, the moonlight-like woman remained beautiful, but her entire being was shattered, like a beautiful porcelain that had been broken, covered in cracks. Ziyu was dumbfounded. One moment, she thought Duan Yun wanted to elope with this woman, and the next, he blew her up, truly ruthless. Ziyu couldn't help reminiscing about when she defied Duan Yun and was captured and taught a lesson by him. At that time, she believed her natural beauty would prevent old demon Duan, no matter how ruthless, from killing her. At most, he would imprison and torture her out of anger. Now it seems she was wrong. If you really end up on old demon Duan's list, it doesn't matter if you're a beauty or not. He can enjoy you for a moment and then ruthlessly blow you up. Yes, this moonlit beauty is the perfect example. After being forcibly pulled down from the twisted flower tree, that tree could still move. It just seemed softer, like losing its backbone, swaying its branches and crawling over like a heap of snakes. At a glance, if not for its sinister appearance, it might truly resemble a pair of lovers with the female blown up by a villain, while the male struggles to touch her corpse. But the next moment, after seeing the scene in the pit, the tree decisively turned to flee. Run where? Duan Yun pushed with his right hand, his fist power wrapped around a heroic fire lotus, transforming into a fireball and chasing it. With a loud explosion, the flower tree was blasted to the ground. Its trunk and branches ignited. It twisted and struggled like a snake, and soon fell silent. The culprit was punished, but the cave was still not quiet. The trumpet sounds and voices demanding, "Blow the trumpet for me," continued to spread, but since the woman was smashed to death, the sounds were no longer unified and became chaotic like a marketplace. Duan Yun, annoyed, grabbed the thoroughly burnt carp's tail and swung again, with a loud, muffled sound. The massive carp's body flew and smashed into the 9th floor palace, almost silencing the cacophony. Because these sounds should have been from the meat trumpets emitted by those clay pots. After such a critical hit, there shouldn't be many clay pots left intact. At this moment, Duan Yun was somewhat tired. He entered the pit and kicked the moonlit beauty, breaking her directly. I must say, from the first moment he held her, he felt she wasn't human. Because though her skin was soft, it had a cold feel, not matching the legendary ice-skinned jade bone girl of the martial world's top 10 artifacts. Now shattered, though blood was flowing, she resembled broken porcelain. What kind of thing is this Source Palace noble anyway? At this moment, Duan Yun's eyes brightened, and he swept with his hand. The meat parts of the woman were swept aside, revealing a stone as radiant as the moon. The stone emitted a gentle moonlight, with fleshy buds growing on it, inscribed with unfamiliar ancient script. At this moment, Ziyu leaned over and asked, "What is this?" Duan Yun shook his head and said, I don't know. Looks like a piece of jade. Maybe worth some money. Ziyu, facing the ancient script, confusedly said, Moon Palace big perverted jade? Duan Yun was surprised and said, You can read the script on it? Ziyu nodded and said, Text from the ancient moon will country. Duan Yun realized and said, Silver jade? This doesn't look like silver at all. Only jade. Silver isn't worth much. Ziyu explained, Perverted as in obscene. Duan Yun was shocked and said, Perverted jade? What's its purpose? Ziyu said, What do you think? Duan Yun tossed the perverted jade to Ziyu and said, You keep it safe for me first. Then he added, This thing's origin is unclear. Don't secretly use it yourself. Upon hearing this, Ziyu angrily said, Me secretly use this? Who do you think you're looking down on? The carp is dead, and the culpable Source Palace noble has also been defeated. After thoroughly searching later and exterminating the carp's 9 clans, it should be over. Who could have thought such evil was hidden beneath this heroic land? If they hadn't used dreams to scare people, he might never have known such evil existed. On the way to meet Wang Matzi, Duan Yun and Ziyu found a stele. This stele seemed to have been knocked down from above, engraved with many ancient script texts, all of that ancient moon will country style. Ziyu picked it up, examined it for a while, and then said in surprise, This seems to explain the origins of this Source Palace. Afterwards, Duan Yun went to his previous location, carried Wang Matzi, and cremated the drained corpses. Then he meticulously searched the area, truly discovering a carp nest. These carp were quite sizable, probably with some intelligence, originally trembling in a corner of the water, but were found by Duan Yun. Naturally, Duan Yun struck with his hand and sent them on their way. When Duan Yun and Ziyu returned, it was almost dark. Many people gathered by the river, naturally including the Morong brothers. Thus, the group saw Duan Yun carrying a shriveled person and Ziyu carrying a steel back. The Morong brothers rushed over, saying, They said you encountered ghosts? Are you all right? Duan Yun shook his head and said, I'm fine. Young hero Duan, who is this person? At this moment, a martial artist nervously asked. Wang Matzi. Duan Yun replied. Next moment, the martial artist lamented. Brother Wang Matzi, you died so tragically. Your sister-in-law and niece were so good. Yet only I can take care of them. How can you be so heartless? This martial artist and Wang Matzi were always close. At this moment, he couldn't help but look at Ziyu, crying and howling. See how good purple heroine is to us? You just died, and already she made a steal for you. Duan Yun retorted. Who said he's dead? The crowd was shocked, looking at the shriveled Prince Ma, thinking, Is he still not dead? Immediately, Duan Yun said to the Morong brothers, You're quick on your feet. Quickly gather all nearby death row prisoners. I need to save someone. Okay. The Morong brothers didn't hesitate, their feet turning into a blur as they went straight to the city prison. Wang Matzi finally came back to life, his hand tightly pressed against the palm of a terrified death row prisoner. With Duan Yun's true qi enhancement, the prisoner could feel his blood constantly flowing into Wang Matzi's body. The prisoner, pale-faced, said, Why me? Duan Yun explained, Of 10 prisoners, you're the only one with B-type blood. Who else but you? The prisoner was bewildered and said, B-blood? I'm a man, why would I have B-blood? At this moment, he gasped and said, Can't we switch people? I feel like I'm going to die. Duan Yun said disdainfully, You're going to the marketplace for execution the day after. Dying now still saves a life. Consider it doing a good deed before dying. The prisoner suddenly became agitated and said, No, good deed. I can't do good deeds. Quick, kill me. Saying this, he tried to bite his tongue to avoid doing the good deed. But Duan Yun firmly grasped his jaw to prevent his suicide. Only when enough blood was drained did Duan Yun kick him aside, saying, You've done the good deed now. The man's eyes widened in rage, cursing, I, Li Dai. proud to be the #1 villain in Yoon State's 8 great villains, utterly devoid of conscience. Why do you harm me and tarnish my villainous name? Oh heavens! Is my villainy going to be surpassed by the second? Old demon Duan, you're so malicious. Saying this, he spat out a mouthful of blood and died of anger. At night, everyone was having a meal together. Duan Yun's experiences today were strange enough, leading the Morong brothers to sigh. Turns out, the carp spirit rumors around here are true. Feng Linger quipped, I was just busy in Wangchun City, and you went and did such a big deed? At this moment, Ziyu excitedly carried out the steel, nearly scaring Feng Linger, who almost jumped up. She couldn't help but say, Why are you carrying around a steel in the middle of the night? To play ghost. Ziyu ignored her, happily saying, I know where this Source Palace noble came from. Also, I know the use of this Moon Palace big perverted jade. Saying this, she took out the moonlit stone and shook it. The Morong brothers were the first to react, asking, What jade? The big perverted jade, that perverted one, Ziyu explained. This got the Morong brothers excited, and they said, Oh my, this is something good. Duan, you said you didn't find any treasure. Duan Yun briefly recounted the events, and while the Morong brothers lamented him destroying a woman as beautiful as the moonlight as a waste, they also asked why he didn't try to find more treasures inside, as there might be something valuable. Duan Yun gave them the directions and told them to find it themselves, but they became lazy again. Duan Yun then asked, How do you use this? Just that. Ziyu explained, It's not just that, it can also be that. Feng Linger, with a face of disgust, said, What else can it be? Ziyu explained, Look at the little sprout on top. They say if it receives heat, it becomes soft and closely adheres to a person's that. The Jade Pearl heroes and Little Een all showed surprised expressions. This group of people was considered worldly wise, and although Ziyu kept saying that they understood it all, even the youngest Little Een, there was no helping it, as Little Een, under her mother's influence, knew no less than these people. Feng Linger mocked, This is too perverse, isn't it? The Morong brothers joined in the mockery. They say that woman is as cold as the moon on the outside, but playing with this, truly a woman of contradictions is, A woman of what? Ning Qing, unable to hold back her curiosity, asked. The Morong brothers quickly said, Truly a woman of disgrace. Ziyu continued, What's so perverse about this? Using this one can even perform the Moon Dream Heart Sutra. The strange dreams we had before were because that noble used this, that, and performed it. Feng Linger was surprised and said, There are actually such mystical skills in this world. At this time, Ziyu put down the steel and said with a serious face, According to this steel, this mystical skill is not of the mortal world but from above. From above. In the night, a gust of wind blew, causing the oil lamp's flame to flicker left and right, and the bamboo forest on the graveyard rustled as if whispering secrets. Everyone's expressions turned more serious, as if that one sentence had deepened the night itself. Duan Yun couldn't help but recall a poem. Don't dare to speak loudly for fear of startling people from above. And now, what they were discussing seemed to be precisely the people from above. The steel records that the Moon Dream Heart Sutra is a supreme skill of the Moon Palace up above. The fairies of the Moon Palace often hold such perverted jade, performing while creating dreams. It is said the entire Moon Palace was once enveloped in such an enchanting moon dream for over 100 years for the immortals above to enjoy. Ziyu, deserving to be an author, with a short description ignited the imagination of Duan Yun and the others. If this were true, then one could only say that the immortals above are really unrestrained, and the fairies of the Moon Palace are indeed uninhibited. This scenario is indeed somewhat abstract, comparable to novels of pure love written by Ziyu. Later, a great upheaval occurred in the Moon Palace, forcing them to temporarily leave the heavenly court. Hence, the fairy of the Moon Palace took out 2 divine swords. It is said these 2 divine swords have extraordinary power, able to reach the heavens above and connect to the netherworld below. The Moon Palace Fairy used these swords to cut open the passage of the heaven-reaching river, and through it, they came to the mortal world. The Star Maiden falls into the mortal world, still possessed of celestial might, yet it couldn't withstand the rampant sinners of Jojo at the time, who all took pride in the seduction of the fallen celestial maiden. Curious as a child, Duan Yun asked, "What is a sinner's demon? I've never heard of it." The Murong brothers said, "That happened several hundred years ago. At that time, a book, Sinner's True Scripture, was widely circulated, claiming one could attain the Tao through seduction. Now, the martial world is rampant with this sinner's ethos, probably because there were too many sinners' demons then and too much seduction. Reportedly, half of Jojo's newborns were the offspring of these demons. Now the martial world loves seduction. Those who love it likely have the demon's blood. It is said before the Sinner's True Scripture, the martial world wasn't as full of killing and seduction but more killing and less seduction." Duan Yun said, "Is there truly such a tale?" The Murong brothers proudly replied, "Who's to blame for your late debut and lack of knowledge?" It was apparent that only Duan Yun seemed unaware of these matters. Duan Yun looked at Little Een and asked, "Do you, a child, know about this too?" Little Een stood with a puffed-up chest and said, "Of course, I'm not a novice to the martial world." Duan Yun only felt discriminated against and quickly changed the subject, telling Ziyu, "Please continue." The news of the Moon Palace Fairy's descent to the mortal world spread quickly, and soon the sinner's demons took notice. After descending, the fairy still possessed celestial might, dealing with martial world people effortlessly, but she couldn't resist the endless demons, reckless and fearless, each considering seducing the fairy a glory. Even if they only touched her toe, it was worth dying. In the end, the fairy of the Moon Palace couldn't fight the numerous demons alone, and eventually fell, being that, and consecutively giving birth to offspring. Yet, even though fallen into the mortal realm, the fairy and her offspring never gave up the idea of returning to the heavenly court. The Source Palace is one of those lineages. This noble from the Source Palace claims to be from the orthodox Moon Palace. After the fairy fell, her power greatly diminished, fearing continued seduction. She hid in the mountain cave by Lake, gave birth to offspring, built the Source Palace, started planting trees and nurturing immortal carp. Whether it's dream building or planting trees and nurturing immortal carp, all are what the Moon Palace Fairy excelled at. But the mortal world is not the Moon Palace. The fairy and her offspring could only maintain longevity by consuming human blood, though eternal life was rare. The woman Duan Yun killed was not the fairy who had first fallen into the mortal world, but her offspring, and they all called themselves Source Palace Nobles, signifying a return to the source, to return to the heavenly court. The lineage of the Source Palace has always been searching for the two lost divine swords, as these are key to returning to the heavenly court. According to the clues on the steel, it is said that these two divine swords, which can reach the heavens above and connect to the netherworld below, are currently in the hands of a certain great heavenly dog of Fusang overseas. And that great heavenly dog's methods are astonishing. Even the Source Palace nobles cannot succeed for the time being and can only temporarily avoid the sharp edge. At this point, the Jade Pearl heroes all fell into silence. This claim sounds absurd. What fairy fell into the mortal world? What divine sword can cut open the heaven-reaching river and directly link to the netherworld? But when you think about it carefully, they don't seem to be baseless fantasies. Because whether it's that bizarre Source Palace, or that exaggeratedly large carp, or those Source Palace nobles who can both build dreams and magically coexist with flowers and trees, all seem not to be ordinary human things. And this martial world has always been crazy anyway, whether it's the Azure Dragon emerging on moonlit nights or the Old Mother Divine Iron obtained by the Thunder God and Mother Sex Thunder listening. None are things a proper martial hero world should have. At this moment, Duan Yun even thought of certain old friends and said, "How come this theory seems somewhat familiar?" Ziyu shared a telepathic connection with Duan Yun and said, "You're right." The Steel also mentioned it. The Red House Girls can be considered another branch of the Moon Palace Fairies. There had been disputes over who was the orthodox of the Moon Palace, but the Source Palace nobles believe that the Red House Girls have been thoroughly corrupted by the demons, with more demonic blood in them than orthodox, so they looked down on them greatly. Upon hearing this, Feng Linger and others couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. So there's such a theory. The Red House is a powerful force, famous in the martial world for many years, always liking to demonize people, even claiming it's to return to the heavenly court, which can be considered the bright line. Who could have thought that beneath this bright line there would be these undercurrents? If Duan Yun and the others hadn't dug out this undercurrent of the Source Palace, few in the martial world would probably know this secret. Or to put it another way, if the Source Palace nobles hadn't provoked Duan Yun, she might have been able to live many more years, always holding on to the hope and dream of returning to the heavenly court. Yet you provoke the person who loves breaking people's pride and dreams the most, old demon Duan. At this time, the Murong brothers couldn't help but say, could those two divine swords really exist? As an exceptional talent in the sword Dao with 1 in a million aptitude, I think such a divine sword artifact should be in the hands of a hero like me. Duan Yun couldn't help but sigh. As an exceptional talent in the sword Dao, fist Dao and finger Dao, and the face of the Jade Pearl heroes, I totally agree with your idea. Has any of you heard of Fusang's great heavenly dog? Little Lin exclaimed in surprise. What are you planning to do? Duan Yun said, of course, to deal with him. This great heavenly dog doesn't sound like a good person. If the divine swords fall into his hands, who knows what disasters might happen. I say, when I have time, once I'm sure he's not a good person, I must kill that Fusang great heavenly dog's entire family, and take the 2 divine sword artifacts for myself. Oops, I mean safeguard the divine sword artifacts for the benefit of the world, to prevent calamities. Little Lin turned pale and said, in the end, you still want to kill the whole family. Duan Yun retorted, what, killing the whole family? I said it's for properly safeguarding the divine swords for the common people. You don't understand, do you? How can you still have such little understanding after following me, this young hero, for so long? Looking at Duan Yun's serious expression, Little Lin immediately backed down and said, I was wrong. I misunderstood you. Ah! Little Lin let out a strange cry and fell to the ground. Because even so, Duan Yun gave her a flick and teased. With that level of awareness, you still want to eat at the table? You're not allowed to sleep indoors tonight. Little Lin said sadly, got it. What they say about being around a demon is like being around a tiger. Just for speaking a bit of truth, she's been put back in her place. Still, there was a light in Little Yin's eyes. She would definitely be able to eat at the table again. Little Lin vowed to climb higher, step by step. At this moment, not only was Little Lin undaunted, she even conceived an evil plan. Yes, she just needed to climb higher, reach the higher echelons of the Jade Pearl heroes, be bold, become the second in command of the Jade Pearl heroes, and even bolder, press old Demon Duan under her, become the head of the Jade Pearl heroes. And wouldn't revenge against old Demon Duan be just a hand's reach away by then? Little Lin couldn't help but recall a story she had read in a leisure book before, about a little demon girl whose demon mother was killed by a divine catcher of the Qingqi Bureau. Later she sewed on thorns and endured hardship, started from the bottom of the Qingqi Bureau, until she became the second in command of the Qingqi Bureau, and then suddenly rebelled, nearly collapsing the Qingqi Bureau. She, Little Lin, has extraordinary talent and is very young, and with extraordinary wisdom, she can definitely achieve that. The investigation into the Source Palace nobles concluded for now, and the focus returned to this Moon Palace big perverted jade. The Murong brothers said, Ziyu, how do you use this thing? For the greater good of the people and all living beings, I, Brother Murong, am willing to enter the matter myself, experience its evil, and provide you reference. Ziyu said with disdain, you study it? You studying it is polluting the environment. The Murong brothers retorted, watch your language. And then Ning Qing interjected, shut up. If you dare to mess with such improper things, I won't talk to you anymore. The Murong brothers quickly responded with righteousness. I thought about it, and this kind of evil thing is indeed inappropriate for a proper person like me. At this point, Ziyu sneaked a glance at Duan Yun and said, Duan Yun, why don't we try it together? With our talents, We might even figure out how to use the Moon Dream Heart Sutra while accompanying each other. Duan Yun replied, right? If this Moon Dream Heart Sutra can truly build dreams, it would be quite a novel method. He even thought if it could be expanded, such as creating a big dream that wouldn't wake for all the evildoers in a province, allowing them to live eternally in a heroic dream world, it would be a purification of sorts. Ziyu said joyfully, exactly. I've been eager to study this method with you. Her voice was sweet and charming, making Feng Linger's heart race, her chest swelling with anger. Looking at the coquettish Ziyu, Duan Yun said, you must be Green Jade, right? Ziyu, on the other hand, was more of an indoor girl, somewhat socially anxious. Green Jade blinked and said, why would you think that? Don't you quite enjoy my appearances? Compared to my dull sister, this sister of yours is much more fun. Duan Yun nodded, taking the Moon Palace big perverted jade from her hand, and said, how does this work? Come on, I'll tell you personally. Oh, by the way, why don't we go to the cellar? Someone seems unhappy here. Green Jade looked at Feng Linger, teasingly. Duan Yun said, right, there are 2 prisoners in the cellar. Maybe we can even experiment on them. Filled with enthusiasm for the dream building, Duan Yun started heading there. This dream creation skill is not something mundane. Perhaps even with his extraordinary wisdom, he would have to burn some midnight oil to comprehend it. Green Jade saw this, quickly picking up the steel and followed, also flashing a victorious glance at Feng Linger. Feng Linger stood there, shocked, her chest heaving with anger. Littleine couldn't help but feel secretly delighted and said, humph, old demon Duan, you wouldn't let me eat at the table, so I'll ignite a fire in your harem first. Watching Feng Linger like this, Littleine couldn't help but feel secretly pleased and muttered to herself, humph, old demon Duan, if you don't let me eat at the table, then I'll just light a fire in your harem. Littleine couldn't help but remember a story she once read in a leisure book. It was about a little demon girl whose demon mother was killed by a divine catcher of the Qingqi Bureau. Later on, she became embittered and endured hardship, starting from the bottom of the Qingqi Bureau and eventually becoming its second in command, nearly toppling it. She, Littleine, with her unmatched talent, very young, with extraordinary wisdom, would definitely be able to do it. The research on the Source Palace nobles temporarily concluded, and now the focus shifted back to this Moon Palace big perverted jade. The Morong brothers said, Ziyu, how do you use this thing? For the greater good of the people and all living beings, I, Brother Morong, am willing to throw myself into this to thoroughly understand its wickedness for your reference. Ziyu looked at him with disdain and said, you study it? Your research would be polluting the environment. The Morong brothers protested, what are you talking about? Then Ning Qing interjected, shut up. If you dare to play with such improper things, I won't let you live it down. The Morong brothers quickly put on a righteous face and said, I've reconsidered. Such an evil item is indeed not suitable for a person as proper as me. At this point, Brother Morong said, Ziyu, how do you use this thing? For the greater good of the people and all living beings, I, Brother Morong, am willing to step forth and experience this evil thing for your reference. Ziyu, looking full of disdain, said, you research? Your research would pollute the environment. The Morong brothers retorted, watch your mouth. But Ning Qing interjected, shut up. A proper person like you playing with such indecent things, I'll have no more to do with you. The Morong brothers quickly responded with uprightness. I thought about it. This kind of evil object isn't suitable for a proper person like me. At this moment, Ziyu said to Morong brothers, how do you use this thing? For the sake of the vast common people and all living beings, I, Brother Morong, am willing to throw myself into this to thoroughly experience its wickedness for your reference. Ziyu appeared entirely disdainful and said, you study? Your study is polluting the environment. The Morong brothers replied, watch your mouth. At this moment Ning Qing interjected, shut up. If you dare play around with such improper things, I won't talk to you anymore. Brother Morong quickly responded with uprightness, I thought it over, and this kind of wicked thing indeed isn't fit for a proper person like me. Then, Ziyu turned to Duan Yun, speaking sweetly. Wouldn't you agree, Taoist? Seeing Ziyu's charming appearance, Duan Yun said, You must be Green Jade, right? Ziyu was somewhat more of a homebody and socially anxious. Green Jade blinked and asked, Why do you think that? Do you not like me? Duan Yun nodded and took the Moon Palace big perverted jade from her hand, saying, So how does this work? Come on, I'll show you myself. Oh, by the way, why don't we go to the cellar? Someone seems to be getting upset here. Green Jade teased, glancing at Feng Linger. Duan Yun said, Right. There are 2 prisoners in the cellar. Maybe we can experiment on them. Filled with anticipation for the extraordinary dream creation skill, Duan Yun shouted to the delicate Green Jade, Extraordinary wisdom, activate. Extraordinary wisdom, activate. Green Jade looked at Duan Yun activating his extraordinary wisdom, with a face full of admiration. One can only say, truly living up to his name, old demon Duan. Even when he's crazy, he looks so dashing. Yes, she didn't care at all about Duan Yun's cultivation. What she cared about was her intimacy with Duan Yun, because this Moon Dream Heart Sutra is incomplete, with only a general outline. How could it possibly be fully practiced? Moreover, even if this cultivation technique had a complete version, it's obviously a bloodline technique, or rather a family technique. Duan Yun couldn't possibly be the true child of those alleged nobles of the Source Palace and thus couldn't possibly practice it. Forcing oneself to practice it would likely only lead to madness. What she cared about was her place in Duan Yun's heart. Being Purple Jade's elder sister, her vision was naturally broader than her foolish sister's, and she had long seen the limitless prospects of the future Jade Pearl heroes. Now that the Jade Pearl heroes are taking shape, they have already driven out the established sects like the Mo sect, and even captured the leading lady of Tianzhou's top 10 famous items, occupying the prosperous Wangchun city, destined to be a force in the martial world that cannot be ignored. She liked it here very much and wanted to exert her ambitions here. And among them, Duan Yun, the leader of the Jade Pearl heroes, was the key, meaning that this young hero, whose demonic name was more famous than his heroic name, would set the limit of the Jade Pearl heroes. The closer people are to him, naturally they will reach higher and see farther. It's said that behind every successful man, there is a woman who supports him. Therefore, Green Jade wanted to climb step by step to become that woman. She even aimed to use special means to place Duan Yun below her. In that case, she would be the leader of the Jade Pearl heroes. One can only say her sister, though foolish, had made progress. For example, this time when they went to kill a Source Palace noble, she actually got intimate with Duan Yun. The taste of old demon Duan was indeed great, but why wasn't it when I was present? Although she could experience some of those feelings through the fuzzy memories of her sister Purple Jade, it was ultimately not a first-hand experience, having a feeling of disconnection as if separated by a layer of film. No, not just a sense of disconnection, but even a sense of defeat at being preempted by her sister. Being an elder sister, how could she lose in such matters? Thus, Duan Yun had no idea that within this small Yuzhu manor, there were already 2 women determined to climb step by step to the top, even wanting to place him beneath them. Now Duan Yun looked at the stele, his sharp eyes sweeping over the ancient script on it. But at this moment, he encountered a problem that even his extraordinary wisdom couldn't temporarily solve. Yes, he couldn't recognize the words on it. He wasn't an archaeology student. How could he recognize the words of a country that had been extinct for many years, the ancient Moonwill country? He even seriously suspected that the ancient Moonwill country was a nation created by the sinners and their descendants of the past. According to Green Jade's statement, after the sinners dispersed, numerous versions of the sinners' true scripture were circulated, each version affecting different people differently, but the results were the same. That is, those who practiced different versions of the sinner's true scripture usually went mad and died explosively. It's said that one sinner with the deepest power even caused the explosive tragedy, killing half a town as he died explosively. Duan Yun felt deeply abhorrent and regretful about this. If he had traveled to that era with all the sinner's true scripture in his possession, he would definitely be able to fully grasp and integrate it, eliminating the bad and preserving the good, transforming it into a legitimate cultivation technique. Then the Jianghu penchant for sinning would be curbed, turning it into a world filled with love. However, that was only a conception. Because there were too many explosive tragedies, the sinner's true scripture was ultimately gradually eliminated by the people of the martial world and is now invisible, leaving only the penchant for sinning. Now with eyes blazing, Duan Yun stared at the steel, initially with wisdom wide open, spirited and vigorous. Yet because he couldn't recognize the words on it, he felt slightly awkward. It was like having taken off one's pants, only to feel limp. Thus, he knocked on the steel and said to Green Jade, "Translate, translate." "Ah, help me recognize the words." Afterwards, Green Jade taught Duan Yun to recognize words. One can only say Green Jade as a teacher had plenty of tricks up her sleeve, like occasionally pressing her big chest against Duan Yun's side or occasionally bumping him intimately, something Purple Jade wouldn't do. On the contrary, Green Jade found it quite justified, pressing against Duan Yun while teaching him words, and secretly sighed, "Sister, I've sacrificed so much for you." Duan Yun completely didn't notice this point. In his mind, there were only Big Chest, Flat Chest, and others. Big Chest belonged to the Goddess Catcher sisters. Flat Chest belonged to Shining. Other than those, they were just chest. Now he was concentrated on recognizing words, wishing to recognize a flower from these ancient scripts of the ancient Moon Will country. Relying on extraordinary wisdom, Duan Yun quickly recognized the outline of the Moon Dream Heart Sutra. Very quickly, he also found that it was just an outline, and the description was quite vague. According to the description on the steel, it said the fairy of the Moon Palace came down to the human world from the heavenly river, but suddenly couldn't remember the heavenly script and could only use the worldly script she had just learned to describe this cultivation technique. Perhaps because she had just arrived in the human world, she didn't learn well, and the noble of the Source Palace was the descendant of the fairy of the Moon Palace, having gone through another transfer, so the description above had a bit of a self-talk feel of a mental illness. But for him, this was not a problem. He possessed extraordinary wisdom, and this vague description was rather conducive to the display of his extraordinary wisdom. Extraordinary wisdom mainly lies in the extraordinary, not in following step by step. At this moment, Duan Yun's extraordinary wisdom was quickly set into motion, giving Green Jade the impression that his whole body was radiating heat. How could he be even more flirtatious than her? Green Jade adjusted her collar and thought to herself, could this be a sign of losing control? She turned to look aside and found someone even more flirtatious. The imprisoned young master's wife, Lei Ying, was now barely dressed. She looked at Green Jade, her eyes full of mockery, as if saying, "What good is it?" Even Tianzhou's greatest treasure was harshly punished by him without any sense of tenderness. "Do you think you can still tempt this old demon?" In some aspect, she was right. Duan Yun wasn't one to be slowed by women. But now the cultivation technique in front of him was indeed more tempting than the undressed Green Jade. Not to mention Green Jade was wearing clothes. Duan Yun was now fully absorbed in contemplation. Night had fallen, but he remained intensely focused. To serve with the instrument, stabbing the sensitive places, stirring into a river, suddenly becoming world-shaking. Duan Yun looked at these words, picked up the big perverted jade of the Moon Palace, and tried to translate. Use this jade to stimulate the most sensitive place? Green Jade cast a flirtatious glance, and curiously asked, "Where is your most sensitive place?" She couldn't resist giving Duan Yun an up-and-down look. Duan Yun thoughtfully said, "I have no weak spots anywhere on my body, and I'm even likely to cultivate to an unbreakable state, which means there's nowhere particularly sensitive on me, making stimulation difficult." Under Green Jade's gaze, he measured around his eyes, chest, and soles of his feet but ultimately found no satisfying answer. Green Jade couldn't help but murmur, "Are you not sensitive there?" She spoke, looking at the waistline of Duan Yun's trousers. Duan Yun also looked toward his own waist and thoughtfully said, "This part, because of frequent sword chi training, with sword chi going in and out, is already unbreakable and not sensitive at all." Upon hearing this, Green Jade was shocked. "Can you even train sword chi there?" She quickly followed up with excitement. "Did you even train it to be unbreakable?" At this moment, she suddenly found Duan Yun turning his gaze from his own waist to hers. Duan Yun opened his mouth and asked, "Where are you most sensitive?" Green Jade swiftly tightened her legs, making them seamless, and replied, "What are you doing? I'm sensitive everywhere." Duan Yun, excitedly exclaiming, "Then that's just right." As he spoke, he reached out and pulled Green Jade closer. In an instant, Green Jade let out a shriek. The night was deep, and Feng Linger's party could hardly sleep, especially after being alerted by Little Een. Feng Linger increasingly felt unable to leave that sly woman alone with Duan Yun. So she called Ning Qing, using the reason of watching young hero Duan comprehend under Yuju's supervision, intending to go and observe below. Yes, under the eyes of all, with supervision from a group of heroines, you certainly couldn't behave indiscreetly, right? Since Ning Qing had just woken up, she only now dressed and arrived, just in time to hear Green Jade's cry from the cellar below. Feng Linger was surprised. So quickly? Impossible. Thus, she hesitated no more and forcibly opened the cellar door, squeezing inside. Ning Qing closely followed to join in the excitement. Then the two heroines lined up and stood there. Inside the cellar, Duan Yun was pressing his hands on Green Jade's temples, continuously kneading, while the big perverted jade of the Moon Palace in his right hand emitted a dim yellow light. Indeed, even the Moon Palace jade turned yellow. This jade, originally moon-colored, was now turned yellow by Duan Yun's extraordinary wisdom and kneading. Duan Yun had realized that the jade became effective when rubbed on flesh with a certain frequency. This turning yellow indicated that the jade had begun to work. In the eyes of Ning Qing and Feng Linger, Green Jade's face now showed a mix of pleasure and pain, leaving an impression of being caught between joy and death itself, yet not dead enough. It was apparent she was extremely sensitive. Her right boot had been kicked off, and her pale toes were curled up. To serve with the instrument, stabbing the sensitive places, stirring into a river, suddenly becoming world-shaking. Duan Yun recited the words on the steel, asking, "I've served with the instrument and stabbed the sensitive place. Do you feel the stirring into a river, suddenly becoming world-shaking sensation?" Green Jade gasped, "No, I don't. Why isn't it right?" With a turn of extraordinary wisdom, Duan Yun said, "I understand. Stirring into a river. Then let me help you stir into a river." As he spoke, true qi roared within him, instantly connecting with Green Jade's body qi. Green Jade had never been Duan Yun's wing, instinctively trying to resist. Duan Yun said, "Relax. Don't resist. I'll be gentle." Green Jade obediently complied. If Green Jade had been like an elder sister trying to tease Duan Yun before, now she was as gentle as a kitten. The next moment, Duan Yun's qi was completely connected with hers. Duan Yun's true qi stirred into a river within him. Green Jade's true qi stirred into a river within herself. Duan Yun couldn't help but ask, "Now, do you feel any changes occurring?" Green Jade replied, "I feel the qi within me is very intense, like waves, so wavy. And then it's just so wavy. A bit too much." Green Jade panted heavily. Clearly, she was somewhat unable to keep up with Duan Yun's rhythm, as her temples and internal meridians were both experiencing a double stimulation beyond anything she'd experienced before. Duan Yun puzzled. "Do you feel suddenly becoming world-shaking, or even an illusion?" Green Jade said, "No. Why?" At this moment, Green Jade felt she couldn't withstand it much longer, gasping greatly and asking, "Could it be that I'm not sensitive enough?" Duan Yun said, "You're not sensitive enough?" In the next moment, he lifted his head, eyes bright and piercing as he stared at Feng Linger and Ning Qing, saying, "She says she's not sensitive enough. What about you two?" Ah! In this situation, Feng Linger and Ning Qing instinctively screamed, wanting to escape. Ning Qing muttered, "They all say don't provoke him in the dead of night. Oh right, I forgot to brush my teeth." Saying this, the two of them turned to leave. Just then, they heard a thud as Duan Yun sucked with his hand, and the cellar door they had just pushed open slammed shut with a thud. With a boom, in the next moment, the two of them were sucked back in. The Morong brothers heard Ning Qing's scream and were startled awake. Without any hesitation, he scrambled like a gecko on the ground toward the cellar. At this moment, he found the door closed and knocked nervously. "Old Demon Duan, open up! Qing, are you okay? Open the door!" The Morong brother's face turned green, and with a bang, he broke down the door, instantly seeing three women panting at Duan Yun's feet. Duan Yun was still deep in thought, looking serious as he said, "Why isn't it working?" Then his bright eyes shifted to the Morong brother, asking, "Are you sensitive? Where are you more sensitive?" The Morong brother instinctively covered his chest with one hand and his crotch with the other, saying fearfully, "Brother, I'm a man." He was very aware that Duan Yun was clearly in some strange state, and it was best not to provoke him now. Duan Yun pondered, "A man? Is there a problem with that?" "Ah!" The Morong brother shouted and ran off. Compared to Feng Linger and Ning Qing, he was very fast, like a wall-hugging gecko. He darted from the broken door of the cellar. Little Een, Big White, and Little Gray heard the commotion and came to watch. In their view, just as the Morong brother crawled out of the cellar like a gecko, his body suddenly froze. He looked at Little Een, Big White, and Little Gray, saying, "No! Save me!" Just as he said this, a hand suddenly stretched out from the cellar and grabbed his ankle. "You can't even suck properly." In the next instant, he clawed at the ground, unable to stop himself from being dragged back to the cellar entrance, leaving 2 long scratch marks on the ground. Little Een watched all this unfold, breaking out in a cold sweat. That scene just now, she felt like the Morong brother was grabbed by a ghost claw and dragged into the abyss hell. Suddenly, her body tensed as she heard Morong brothers shouting from below. Little Een waved to Big White and Little Gray, saying, "Pretend you didn't see anything, let's go." The 3 mounts turned around thoughtfully and trotted away. The cellar was bathed in a yellow hue. The light emitted by the big perverted jade from the Moon Palace was getting more and more yellow, and Morong brother was screaming passionately because he was very sensitive. Duan Yun was pressing down on his foot, stirring up his true qi. Upon hearing his cries, Duan Yun couldn't help but snark, "Your kidneys must be weak." The Morong brother noticed his beloved Ning Qing watching him, and quickly retorted, "That's nonsense. My kidneys are great. They're renowned as gold kidneys." "How could that be? Your reflexology point is so sensitive it's clearly weak, kidneys not good. I'm a professional gynecologist." The Morong brother quickly retorted again, "How could I be weak? Just try a bit harder." Duan Yun nodded, "I only use 20% strength, so let me add a bit more." With that, he increased the strength by another 10%. The Morong brother said, "See, how could I not be gruff, not be weak?" At this point, he was already foaming at the mouth. Duan Yun snarked, "You're calling that weak?" The Morong brother, foaming at the mouth, said, I just..." Before he could finish, he fainted. Duan Yun released his hand, saying, "Tried so many in a row, why isn't it working? With my extraordinary wisdom, how could it be wrong? This definitely isn't my problem. Could it be their sensitivity level isn't enough? No, the Morong brother was this sensitive with his weak kidneys." Saying this, he glanced around, planning to find the number 1 magical artifact in Tianzhou to test it. Tianzhou's number 1 magical artifact, Lei Ying, was already hiding in the corner, too scared to show her face. Given old demon Duan's heavy-handedness, someone with her artifact physique might be scared to death if provoked. But as the number 1 artifact in Tianzhou, it's a fate she can't escape. Lei Ying couldn't help but puff out her chest, ready to face this wickedness with the elegance befitting Tianzhou's number 1 artifact and the Gu family's young master's wife. But after waiting for so long, she realized Duan Yun didn't seem to be looking for her, because at that moment, Duan Yun was staring at that steel. The steel was pressed on green jade, rising and falling with her breaths. This was because green jade was just shaken up and wanted to use the steel to hide, but ended up being spotted by Duan Yun instantly. Just as she wanted to crawl out, Duan Yun very seriously said, "Don't come out. Continue. Continue. Continue breathing, yes. Breathe," Duan Yun said. So Green Jade lay there, swaying and breathing under the steel like a mysterious turtle. Seeing Duan Yun staring at the steel, Laying couldn't help but complain. "Well, I was all ready for you, but you didn't come." Yes, Duan Yun didn't seek her for stimulation testing, and instead of celebrating, she felt disappointed. At this point, Duan Yun's mind was rapidly churning with extraordinary wisdom, like scenes from a movie quickly replaying in his head, especially the scenes involving the Source Palace noble. Offer with artifacts, intrigue of sensitivity, stirring as rivers, illustrious to the world. Rave dancing, playing a trumpet for me? Rhythm. Suddenly, his eyes widened, a face filled with excitement. "I get it. I get it all. I understand it completely. Damn it. I understand everything." Even though Murong had just fainted from having his legs pressed, the voice startled him awake. For a moment, the cellar seemed to be in the throes of a storm, as a few oil lamps swayed back and forth, reflecting Duan Yun's changeable handsome face. Murong wiped the froth from the corner of his mouth. Startled, he said, "No way!" The familiar feeling, here it comes again. At that moment, Murong seemed to return to that stormy night, witnessing old demon Duan mastering the 7-layered spring rain in an instant, shattering his worldview. And many times after that, he thought he should have gotten used to it. Yet every time he faced such a scene, he still felt shocked, fresh, and even a little scared. This time was different from the previous occasions because he was witnessing it with Fenglinger, Ningqing, and Green Jade. For some reason, Murong felt a hint of sourness in his heart. Because in the past, Duan Yun always shocked him alone, but now it was shown to so many people, he felt a sense of bitterness, as if his beloved was displaying in front of others. Green Jade, now carrying the steel, was clearly affected too. Thinking that Duan Yun was inspired because she was carrying the steel, it was as if she herself had comprehended the essence of divine skill, which was something to be proud of. They were in this together. Why couldn't you inspire him? Involuntarily, in the stance of a black turtle crouching on the ground, she raised her proud chest. But now Green Jade was worried that the Moon Dream Heart Sutra only had a general outline, and even if Duan Yun was inspired, it was useless. Surely being inspired can't lead to mastery, right? Just then, Duan Yun's enchanted gaze fell back on her, saying, "Besides the Murong brother with poor kidneys, it has to be you. You are indeed more sensitive than them all." Fenglinger retorted, "You mean to say I'm not as good as her? When it comes to sensitivity, who is afraid of the red-face heroine?" At this time, a woman's voice echoed from the depths of the cellar. "I am Tianzhou's #1 instrument. Absolutely more sensitive." Young master's wife of the Gu family, Lei Ying, volunteered. She was also affected by Duan Yun's state and wanted to be involved. Simultaneously, an evil plan took shape in her mind. With her unparalleled beauty and status as Tianzhou's top instrument, even if captured, it was an opportunity. As long as she seized the chance, she could climb step by step to the top and become the woman behind old demon Duan. By then, she might even have the chance to overpower old demon Duan and complete her revenge. The more humiliating these days were, the more satisfying her revenge would be. At this moment, Lei Ying was frighteningly confident, because when it came to sensitivity, she truly feared no one. Yes, no matter how many times, she was always as sensitive as the first time, which was one of the reasons for her fame. Faced with this woman's sudden intrusion, Fenglinger and Green Jade, who were originally displeased with each other, suddenly turned on her, angrily scolding, "How can a prisoner like you talk about sensitivity?" Lei Ying, with a face full of sorrow, said, "I just want to be of some use. If it can help young hero Duan comprehend a little, I would be satisfied." Duan Yun turned his head towards Lei Ying and said, "Are you sure you're sensitive enough? You know the consequences if you dare to deceive me." Lei Ying affirmed with determination in her eyes, "I'm sure. I don't agree with this." I don't agree, Feng Linger and Green Jade said in unison. Both of them already thought each other was treacherous enough. Who would have thought there was another witch? Duan Yun said, since she volunteered, that's best. This way I can really let loose. Yes, with people like Green Jade who were considered his own, he always had to be careful. But Lei Ying was the enemy's wife, so there was nothing to hold back. In that case, let's do it, Duan Yun said to Lei Ying. Lei Ying stood firm and said, here I am. You asked for this, Duan Yun said. Yes, I asked for it. Come on. Stop dawdling. Duan Yun, don't make me look down on you, Lei Ying said heroically. At this moment, Murong and Feng Linger were shocked. How did it turn into a tragic drama mixed with war? With a bang, the wooden stake in the cellar room had already been shattered, and Duan Yun was already behind Lei Ying. Just now, he had comprehended through extraordinary wisdom that, in the Moon Dream Heart Sutra, the key to stirring into a river was not just the simple stirring of true qi within the body, but a rhythmical agitation. For example, the rhythm of the Source Palace nobles, blow the horn for me, is an agitation. Because Duan Yun was behind her, Lei Ying couldn't see Duan Yun's face. The thought of this extremely evil old demon being behind her, where she couldn't see him, induced a sense of blindfolded fear and excitement. As a result, she felt even more sensitive. Duan Yun's palms heated up, executing a technique akin to palm thunder, and in an instant, the big perverted jade of the Moon Palace emitted a yellow glow. Previously, Duan Yun would cause the jade to turn yellow gradually, but this time he had clearly increased the intensity. If the previous method was like slow cooking, then now it was a quick stir-fry. With a snap, the heated big perverted jade of the Moon Palace was pressed against Lei Ying's skin. In the next moment, Lei Ying's bright face changed suddenly, due to Duan Yun pressing his fists against her temples, increasing the intensity of his kneading, causing her entire face to ripple. Her whole body tensed up, her entire person resembling a bow that Duan Yun had drawn to its fullest, indeed appearing more sensitive. Stir into a river. Duan Yun's true qi surged and instantly entered Lei Ying's body. At that moment, the bow that had been bent by Duan Yun appeared almost like a full moon. The Murong brothers, who always cherished beauty, looked nervous and said, will it break? Be gentle. Duan Yun didn't listen at all. He just continued to stir things up. In the next moment, a voice suddenly sounded, play the trumpet for me. This time, the Murong brothers and the others jumped in surprise again. No one here had opened their mouths, including Lei Ying, who was being manipulated, so where did that voice come from? Play the trumpet for me. Then the voice appeared again. This time, they finally discovered the source of the voice. The sound was actually coming from Lei Ying's belly. With the most sensitive ears, Ning Qing could even hear that the sound was emanating from Lei Ying's belly. Duan Yun evidently treated Lei Ying as an instrument, trying to find the rhythm of the Source Palace noble from that day. Even someone with extraordinary wisdom like Duan Yun needs to strive, constantly changing rhythm and pitch to recall that day's tempo. In the eyes of Qingyu and the others, Lei Ying's body would sometimes form a D shape, sometimes an O shape, and other times an S shape, while the rhythm from her belly button kept changing. Seeing this scene, Qingyu and Feng Linger felt fortunate that they weren't the ones being used. They probably couldn't withstand this level of torment. The Murong brothers felt a pang of heartache, thinking to themselves, she's not my wife, but I almost want to stand up and stop it. But she's certainly a beauty. Old demon Duan, be gentle. Duan Yun's attempt wasn't very ideal. He changed the pitch at least 100 times and transformed Lei Ying's body 88 times. Yet still didn't achieve the progress he had imagined. Indeed, that destined breakthrough point hadn't appeared. What exactly was the problem? Extraordinary wisdom. What's going on? I command you to solve everything. Duan Yun applied more force, his mind filled with the spinning extraordinary wisdom. Just as Lei Ying, like the Murong brothers, was being messed with to a point of rolling eyes and foaming at the mouth, a sudden spark of inspiration hit Duan Yun's mind, and he said, I get it! I get it again! I completely understand everything now. The Morong brothers were shocked once again. Get it again and again? Are you the Lord of Understanding? For crying out loud? At this moment, the great perverted jade of the Moon Palace was not only heating up but scorching, casting a yellow light on Duan Yun, making him look like he had golden hair. Play the trumpet for me. The same voice rang out again, but this time, it didn't come from Lei Ying's belly button. It seemed to come from her mouth. Yet she hadn't opened her mouth. Play the trumpet for me. The voice repeated, and everyone's eyes changed, because they felt that Lei Ying was glowing, and even a pair of light wings seemed to sprout from her back. This scene was ridiculously bizarre. Morong brothers couldn't help but say in shock, could she be ascending to become a fairy? Duan Yun looked at this scene with great satisfaction. This time he truly understood everything. The reason understanding was difficult this time was that he forgot that practicing martial arts is indeed a scientific thing. Dream building is essentially about affecting people's minds. He always used Lei Ying's body for rhythm, which was clearly unscientific. It requires using the brain. The most direct influence on the mind's rhythm and tempo is brainwaves. And the function of the Moon Dream Heart Sutra strengthens people's brainwaves, spreading out its rhythm and tempo, thereby influencing others' minds to create illusions and dream-building effects. Play the trumpet for me was just a slogan for finding rhythm, a key, since the nobles of the Source Palace were used to this slogan, allowing for better results. And his extraordinary wisdom told him, the slogan could be, play the trumpet for me, or it could be others like, I want to be a hero. Suddenly, such a phrase emerged in Lei Ying's mind. In the next moment, her light wings intensified. Sleep for me. Why don't you sleep? Duan Yun said. At this point, the Morong brothers and the others genuinely felt some drowsiness. However, that drowsiness was cut short as soon as it formed a little. The glowing Lei Ying had disappeared, replaced by a Lei Ying in a state of unconsciousness, foaming at the mouth. The Morong brothers looked heartbroken, saying, it's really broken. Looking at Lei Ying in such a state, Duan Yun couldn't help but exclaim, indeed, she couldn't withstand such intensity. I'll have to do it myself. Great Yin Jade, I command you to turn. This time, Duan Yun held the great Yin Jade, and true qi surged directly into his brain. He was lacking in sensitivity, but ultimately, he had a brain with extraordinary wisdom, possessing an absolute talent in using the brain to form rhythms. Like a car, its starting speed may be slower, but it can't withstand the bountiful and continuous power it generates later. I want to be a hero. I have a dream. Play the trumpet for me. One world, one dream. In that instant, 7 or 8 voices simultaneously emerged from Duan Yun's mind. The Morong brothers and the others froze, feeling an odd sensation as if their minds were about to sprout new growths. The next moment they saw Duan Yun also glowing. It seemed as if countless light swords swirled behind him, making him appear like a sword immortal standing heroically in the wind, giving off an invincible aura. However, in the next moment, the scene vanished, returning Duan Yun to his usual appearance, only for the image to reappear after 2 breaths. With this constant shift in visuals, the Morong brothers couldn't help but rub their eyes, feeling as though their eyes had blurred or broken, giving them a dreamlike illusion. Go to sleep. At this moment, the voice in Duan Yun's head continued to echo. The Morong brothers suddenly felt sleepy and couldn't help but yawn. Yet, as their true qi surged within them, they did not fall asleep on the spot. Because they were also martial arts experts in the martial world, it was not easy for Duan Yun to simply use mental force to make them sleep. I said sleep. In the next moment, Duan Yun struck out with both hands, unleashing finger strength, hitting their sleeping acupoint. The Morong brothers' eyelids drooped as they uttered, sneak attack, and fell asleep. In their dream, the Morong brothers were no longer in the cellar, but in a place blooming with peach blossoms. This place was full of peach blossoms, shrouded in mist, resembling an immortal realm. Suddenly, they heard a series of burrow me sounds, followed by a fierce storm and lightning. They were shocked to see Duan-Yun bathed in thunder and lightning, ascending and disappearing from sight. The Murong brothers exclaimed in shock, "Ah! Old demon Duan ascended." Feng Linger and Green Jade looked melancholic and soulful, saying, "Take me with you." Ning Qing said seriously, "There really is a sword immortal." Just then, another burrow me sound rang out, followed by a command, "Sword, come." In an instant, thousands of flying swords came like heavy snow, rushing up to the sky with Duan-Yun, appearing as if to pierce a hole in the sky. The Murong brothers exclaimed in shock, "Ah! Old demon Duan ascended again. Why did I add the word again? Burrow me." Daylight broke completely, and the Murong brothers suddenly awakened from their dream. The first thing he did upon waking was to vomit out a wah. In their dream, he saw old demon Duan ascend hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. Every time he was forced to recite the line, "Ah! Old demon Duan ascended again and again and again." He recited so much he vomited, yet he had to keep saying it. He watched so much he vomited and recited so much he vomited, so he really vomited. He never imagined that the act of ascending could make him feel like this. Likewise, Ning Qing and others who woke up together also felt a bit tortured, having heard the Murong brothers' repeated chanting until they were a bit sick of it. Yes, when something maddeningly repeats in one's mind, no matter how astonishing, one can become bored. It's just like behind every beautiful woman in the martial world, there's a man growing tired of her. This feels somewhat like mental torture. In the next moment, when they saw Duan-Yun's face, they suddenly realized and felt a chill down their spines. Did you really master it? Yes, they'd realized that they'd been coerced into the same dream upon having their acupoint struck. In the dream, Duan-Yun kept ascending repeatedly. This must surely mean that Duan-Yun had mastered the Source Palace Noble's Moondream Heart Sutra. Or perhaps, even more impressively than the original possessor. The original possessor merely warned people, certainly not coercing people to watch Ascension hundreds of times with such perverse intensity. Indeed, having been astounded so often in the dream, even upon awakening, the Murong brothers felt a deep fatigue as if tortured. Duan-Yun nodded and said, "Barely mastered, though still not strong enough." The Murong brothers exclaimed in shock, "How much stronger do you need?" Duan-Yun said, "Ideally, I'd be able to drag someone into a dream with just one glance, testing their endurance in dream trials counting by thousands." One glance? Thousands of times. This statement nearly scared everyone stiff. Watching an ascension so novel and domineering, after hundreds of times they were already somewhat unable to endure it. If this dream trial were of a torturous nature, hitting them thousands of times, they'd likely go mad. The Murong brothers suddenly realized and said, "So, the best solution is to avoid falling asleep then?" Duan-Yun nodded. That's what makes it particularly formidable. At your level, I can't make you sleep directly, only give you a sense of illusion." Illusion? I want to be a hero. At this point, the voice in Duan-Yun's head emerged again, and in the next moment, his entire being began to shine. The Murong brothers and others rubbed their eyes furiously. Ziyu reacted fastest, immediately pricking herself with a needle, drawing blood, and the shining image of Duan-Yun dissipated. It's an illusion. He can create illusions for people. Pain can bring a bit of clarity, said Ziyu, who had practiced the moon-shielding light-shaming sword. The Murong brothers gave themselves a slash, and Duan-Yun indeed no longer shone like an immortal. Looking at the wound on his arm, he couldn't help but complain. Who would get this? Which decent person makes people hallucinate upon meeting, forcing self-harm to break it? Duan-Yun shook his head and said, "To be precise, temporarily break it." Ah! The Murong brothers were shocked again to find Duan-Yun shining once more, so he slashed himself again, temporarily breaking the illusion. At this moment, everyone realized the horror of this ordeal. Old Demon Duan had mastered the divine skill to make people self-harm upon meeting. Yes, this was considering them as experts. If it were someone of a slightly lower level, they'd be dragged into dream torture upon meeting. And if they didn't self-harm, they'd remain in this sort of illusion. In the illusion, Duan Yun seems like an immortal or sword-immortal figure, giving an impression of utter invincibility, making them feel less than even a hair of Duan Yun. The insecurity generated alone would be deadly enough. And the way to break all this is through constant self-harm. What the hell? This is so perverse, Murong Brothers said with a pale tone. He was the face of the Jade Pearl Heroes, the vanguard. In the major event of capturing Wangchun City, he appeared more frequently than Duan Yun, considering himself just a bit less than Duan Yun. If this keeps up, wouldn't he be less than Duan Yun by another bit? 2 bits, how much distance is that? Outside, little Een, who secretly witnessed everything, broke out in a cold sweat. Spread the word, old demon Duan now possesses the ability to make people severely damaged upon meeting. Duan Yun has mastered the Moondream Heart Sutra, possessing for the first time the skill of fighting using purely his mind, which excites him greatly. Young heroes must rely on their brains in combat. The moment they meet, he uses mind waves to induce hallucinations. So clever, so exceptional indeed. The Murong brothers, meanwhile, feel both happy and complicated in emotion. Happiness is assured since Duan Yun mastered it, enhancing the strength of their Jade Pearl heroes as a team, but it's complicated as they didn't master it themselves, due to the big perverted Jade being singular, and their minds indeed unable to keep up. It is destined that this cultivation technique would only be Duan Yun's. The Murong brothers find it complicated that, as young heroes themselves, they went from being a bit behind Duan Yun to falling quite behind. Just fearing that Duan Yun might suffer, yet also fearing Duan Yun might ride little Een, while they can at most ride little Gray. Stimulated by this, the Murong brothers devotedly practiced their skills on the same day, postponing their beloved 2-hour health checks on brothel girls. No other choice. After 2 hours of practice, the Murong brothers found themselves more interested in the health checks of brothel girls. As for the other heroines, except Feng Linger assuming a legitimate stance, all are determined to climb to the top step by step, to be the woman behind Duan Yun, even the one on him. Because Duan Yun has gotten stronger. Strong men should be paired with women like them. Don't even mention Green Jade or Little Een, even Lei Ying has firmly held this belief. As a renowned figure in the martial world, she deserved to be owned by a strong man like Old Demon Duan. As for her husband, if he can't defeat Old Demon Duan to rescue her, he'd only be considered as unfamiliar. Yet Lei Ying remains hopeful for her husband, knowing he's practicing a divine skill. If it were before, she believed after mastering it, Old Demon Duan would surely be defeated. But having suffered under Old Demon Duan in recent times, she is no longer certain. Because Old Demon Duan also bears a divine skill. Skill versus skill, the outcome is truly unpredictable. Gudil, I beg of you, master it. Lei Ying wishes to witness such strong men fighting fiercely for her, since only then can her beauty of being worthy only of being owned by the strong be truly showcased. After the whole family of Big Carp and the Source Palace noble were killed, the river digging project restarted. Upon learning that such monstrous figures were slain by young hero Duan, the workers became even more industrious. Thinking of digging for figures like young hero Duan and Star Rage heroine, the workers could not help but puff out their proud chests. Now this Wangchun City area is the heroic land, even the prosperous land of Yun State, where even ordinary farmers receiving their first harvest feel an illusion of their lives becoming precious as gold. Heroic land is viable, heroic land is superb, fearing that shortly, even the common people's status here will be higher than the rest. The premise is that the Jade Pearl heroes can maintain such rule. In Wangchun City area, the Jade Pearl heroes have the name of heroes, yet once outside this region, in the eyes of most martial world people, they are indeed the thorn in the flesh and Jade Pearl demons. Golden grains handed out to the poor, it's like white silver scattered to the poor, which is simply sinful crime. Isn't this the doing of evil demon? This Old Demon Duan is simply digging the roots of the rightful path of the martial world. Initially, the sects a distance away from Wangchun City initially hated such measures, yet it didn't garner much attention. After all, Old Demon's foundation is still shallow. Stabilizing Wangchun City is hard enough, unlikely to bother them. But until after the autumn harvest, these sects suddenly found that a third of their working farmers and slaves had ran away, Not only that, even brothel girls heard Wangchun City taxed less and a lot had left, discovering the terrifying impact old Demon Duan caused. At this point, these martial world sects truly feel the genuine pang of labor loss. Those fools dare not stay on my land being ravaged and oppressed. They're rushing into the demon cave. For a time, compared to the non-abusive heroic land, the surrounding festering hatred around heroic land intensified. However, these sects aren't without solutions. With fewer slaves and farmers, just intensify the work. Ordinary 6-hour workdays now make it 8 hours. What of fewer brothel girls and poorer quality? Then just diversify styles won't create self-exceed anyway. It's not me who's fatigued. Many secretly head to the demon cave. Most are ordinary people, yet some are martial world enthusiasts. Li Kuan happens to be one of them. In the deep bamboo forest, a scent of decay lingers. Li Kuan leans against several bamboo stalks. His silhouette nearly merges with the bamboo, becoming hard to detect. Yet even in taking such hidden precautions, Li Kuan knows he can only rest for the time of a joss stick. His lips pale purple, and waist abdomen bears a massive gash. Even after acupoint pressing, blood doesn't completely stop. Yet this isn't the worst. The more severe injury is the fracturing of 4 ribs, struck thrice by finger strength seeping into his lungs, and 8 whip wounds on his right arm. These 8 whip wounds rendered his usual right arm numb, no longer able to punch. Without this arm, he's halfway crippled. Simply mentioning the name Li Kuan seems ordinary, but if you mention his alias Turtleman Killer Iron Fist Li, many would recognize it. He's one of the most detested by the martial world's turtle men, directly or indirectly causing the deaths of no less than 200 turtle men. All these changes started because one day he was punched by someone who looked like a monkey. He thought he wasn't a coward, yet he was expelled by his wife, penniless, and in misery. But he held no grudge against his wife. Instead, he thought he wasn't good enough, and planned to work harder and sell more blood to earn more silver, thus pleasing the wife who cast him out. He only wanted a woman, a home, regardless of whether she loved him or not. Because only with a woman and a home in front of others did he feel like a person. However, after taking that punch, he felt awful and vaguely saw a man kneeling before his mother's corpse, cursing her. The cursing was because even after her death, she hadn't given him her savings to offer to his wife, resulting in his expulsion from home. At that moment, Li Kuan only found this person in front of him repulsive, groveling for his wife without a bottom line, and he also broke out in a cold sweat, because he realized he wasn't much better. Some women are never satisfied, and only such cowards could cultivate such women. He discovered that living as a coward was absurd and disgusting. Not only would it ruin oneself, but it might also implicate family members. At this moment, he suddenly found himself disgusting and detestable, and the coward in front of him was repulsive, the woman riding on the coward's back equally detestable and appalling. The punch was heavy and painful, and at the same time, a foul chi arose in his chest. Later, he realized it was a heroic spirit. That spirit gave him courage. He suddenly wanted to be a hero, an open and honorable hero. Looking at that coward, he shouted, "Stop cursing your mother! What did your mother do wrong?" The coward instead ranted, "I'll curse. It's all her fault. If she had just yielded, taken out money, and kowtowed a few times, my wife wouldn't have gotten angry." At that moment, a strong sense of hatred and disgust surged from Li Kuan's chest. He not only loathed the person in front of him but also his former self. Yes, cowards just harm their families and themselves. If such people don't awaken, they shouldn't exist at all. So he decided to destroy this breed with his own hands. The breed he loathed so much. He wanted to be a hero specifically dedicated to killing cowards. When this thought arose, he felt filled with strength. "I'll say it once. The ones wrong are you and your woman. My wife could never be wrong. Apologize. Apologize to my perfect wife." With a bam, Li Kuan threw a punch, smashing the coward's head in front of him, feeling incredibly relieved. That was the first time he had killed a coward. If it weren't for his ambition to become a hero who specializes in killing cowards, he might have beaten himself to death. Therefore, He physically inflicted this on himself as a warning and the price he had to pay for his past cowardice. After that, Li Kuan embarked on the road of killing cowards across the world. Because he truly hated such things. Initially, he only killed cowards, but later realized that just killing cowards wasn't enough to quell his hatred. For behind every coward, there was always a turtle woman riding on their back. So he turned to killing such women, crippling them first, then killing them in front of the cowards. Watching those cowards treat their women as treasures being killed, they often committed suicide in infinite hatred. This was much more satisfying. Later, more people awakened, joining him as like-minded allies. They were all skilled with their fists, all vowed to kill cowards and turtle women, creating widespread panic. Many expert cowards viewed him as a thorn in their side, eager to kill him. Yet he fought braver, growing stronger, becoming a pillar among the heroic killers of cowards. He and his allies even organized the Dragon Man Alliance, launching a root-plucking strike against cowards and turtle women. What they meant by Dragon Man Alliance was that every man should be like a dragon, avoiding becoming a turtle. If a man was oppressed by a woman, as long as he found them, they'd uphold justice. They began to judge turtle women. If any woman deliberately defied the will of a dragon man, they would use their fists to aid. Such actions naturally incited the rage of numerous cowardly experts and turtle women. He faced many setbacks and several times came close to death. But for his belief and to become the heroic killer of cowards, he endured. Even though he'd been injured many times before, none were as perilous as this time. The Dragon Man Alliance had already become a power. They weren't really afraid of temporarily united cowardly experts yet, did not expect to be raided by another martial world force. That was the Thunder God and Mother sect. The Thunder God and Mother sect had been wiped out by their idol Mu Duan Juxia, seldom seen in packs of Thunder listeners on the martial world. But this time, the Thunder listeners from Thunder God and Mother sect suddenly resurfaced in the martial world. Moreover, they had grown even more formidable. First, he was slashed open on his belly by an iron flute from a Thunder listener of the Thunder God and Mother sect. Later during the battle, another Thunder listener suddenly swung a whip as if it bore lightning, each swing cracking 5 times in succession, injuring his right fist technique arm. In the Dragon Man Alliance, perhaps only a few broke through the encirclement. Though he managed to escape, the Thunder listeners of the Thunder God and Mother sect trailed relentlessly, continued chasing him down. The old injuries compounded by new ones left him in this state. Now Li Kuan has only one thought. That is to reach Wangchun City. As long as he gets there, he should stay alive, continue being a Dragon Man hero killing cowards worldwide. He's not afraid of dying, but with cowards still unexterminated, how could he die so easily? Also, the Thunder God and Mother sect who killed so many of his comrades, he would also seek the opportunity to destroy their entire family. Moreover, for a long time, Li Kuan wanted to meet his idol, Hero Duan Yun, and ask whether what he did was right and see if there's room to improve. If not for raising the banner of hero, he might not have achieved what he had today. Li Kuan knew the reason he was still alive, besides his relentless effort, was because the Thunder God and Mother sect wanted to torture him. Like a cat playing with a mouse, they wouldn't rush to kill. And he was not willing to give up any opportunity. Because only by staying alive, reaching Wangchun City, would he have a turning point. To have a turning point in continuing his unfinished business and avenging his entire family. At this moment, birds in the bamboo forest flew away startled. Li Kuan opened his eyes with a ghastly expression, facing north. He knew, once again he had to flee, but his eyes remained firm. Because he too was a hero. Rumble, the thunder roared. It was already late autumn, the fields around Wangchun City had mostly been harvested, and this kind of weather was rare. Facing such weather, Duan Yun was in a good mood. He actually quite liked rainy days. The rainy days around Wangchun City were shrouded in mist, possessing the beauty of an ink painting. Especially when this river got fully dredged, even the heaviest rains wouldn't cause disasters. By then, with willow trees planted and roads laid on both banks, willow trees swaying gently along the river, boats floating among them. It surely would be a beautiful picture. Heroic land should be so beautiful. Duan Yun had been quite satisfied lately, but the Jade Pearl heroes were a bit troubled. Because during martial arts practice, this guy often dreamed building, making them dizzy. Eventually, it was Feng Linger who suggested making Lei Ying and Yuzhu his practice tools. These two women, due to dreaming at night, were forced into dreaming during the day, becoming somewhat mentally disoriented. What surprised him was that Lei Ying, as Tianzhou's most renowned instrument, indeed had her merits. In his dreams, she possessed a strong will, stripping off in his dreams as soon as she saw him and insisting on offering herself forcefully to him, claiming that only he could have Tianzhou's most renowned instrument, and only with her could he dominate the world. All Duan Yun could think was, this is insane. What is wrong with this person? It's been several months since Wangchun City transformed into a heroic land. The place once vilified as the Demon Cave, far from having fewer people, now has even more. Especially after the autumn harvest, local people truly kept their grain without paying taxes, and what they planted became theirs. Business people in the city said they earned more now, without protection fees and high management fees. Thus, some who had followed the Mo sect returned. But after returning, everything was different. Most of those who mixed with the Mo sect were money-eyed opportunists. They left, thinking the Wangchun City area was doomed and would soon be turned to ruins by old Demon Duan and his gang of demons. So they sold their properties cheaply and left outright. What upset them most was that after they left, not only did old Demon Duan not ruin Wangchun City, but he made it thrive. Without Mo sect's cuts, they earned even more than before. Some people were tempted, slinking back, only to find it was now impossible to buy back the cheaply sold properties. Wangchun City and its surroundings now had a sense of Yun State's return, attracting many people from nearby, making shops and properties more valuable than under Mo sect's management. These people could be said to have gambled wrong. Watching what should have been their good life now belonged to others. Those who once followed them lived far better. It made their eyes red with envy. They instinctively wanted to kill, to snatch back what was theirs. But the wicked thing was, under old Demon Duan's heroic order, no killing, no robbing, even getting caught stealing meant punishment. This group stayed behind, unable to stop feeling envious and regretful, saying how much better other places were, and lamenting the lack of liberty in Wangchun City for not killing, robbing, or stealing, which felt like being imprisoned. When others asked why they didn't leave if other places were better, and why come back after leaving, they mumbled about nostalgia, unwilling to watch their hometown fall into demon hands. Those who left and didn't return refused to believe Wangchun City could really be more profitable, with grain owned by those who planted it. Whenever someone praised Wangchun City, they couldn't help but rebut, "Good! How could there be such goodness in a demon cave? Only fools believe that. I escaped from there. Under old Demon Duan, Wangchun City's people are miserably suffering. They're lying to you all. Only fools like you think it's good there." Because of their angry tone and being outsiders, many of them were beaten up. Yet even on their knees pleading, they stubbornly believed Wangchun City was a hellish demon cave, devoid of any goodness. But they probably knew this was self-deception, getting so angry they couldn't sleep at night, cursing old Demon Duan. Golden grain and bright silver given to the poor, such heinous deeds old Demon Duan truly did. Heaven has no eyes. When will this demon die? When will he die a terrible, dismembered death? As Wangchun City's population grew, Duan Yun sometimes found no peace. Too many evil demons hated their Jade Pearl heroes, with many seeing their group of heroes as thorny enemies. But since the prime weapon of Tianzhou, Lei Ying, was captured by old Demon Duan, even the Gu family's young master hasn't acted immediately. Naturally, these people dared not confront the Jade Pearl heroes head-on. Yet they could still play dirty. For instance, after the autumn harvest, a type of person emerged, the kind the Jade Pearl heroes most despised, the heroic villain. On the surface, they responded to the call of the Jade Pearl heroes to be heroes, but in secret they committed evil deeds, then pinned the blame on directives from the Jade Pearl heroes. These people were clearly under evil demons' control, acting for money. Duan Yun had already executed 6 with extreme measures. Upon hearing the news, Other heroic villains dared not act, even for money, and began fleeing. But the Jade Pearl heroes had a policy to kill all enemies without exception. Thus, the Murong and Ning Qing brothers had proactively gone to hunt down these fleeing heroic villains. Those who tarnished the Jade Pearl heroes' reputation would be killed, no matter where they fled. Many people have come to the Wangchun City area, more or less escaping from elsewhere. Because the outside martial world's evil demons were blocking others from coming to Wangchun City, many who arrived were injured. For a time, doctors' clinics were overwhelmed, with Duan Yun often spending a lot of time treating people. As a result, his reputation as a doctor also grew. Now, in the Wangchun City area, it's widely said he not only excels in martial arts but also surpasses Jiangzhong sect's divine doctor in medicine, with low fees to boot. Some rumors even say there's nothing young hero Duan can't do, even the improbable of giving birth alone. These rumors were so exaggerated, they gave Duan Yun a headache. One day, Duan Yun had just finished business in Wangchun City, sitting on the golden chair of the deceased Mo sect elder Li Mafei, sipping tea. Just after sipping the tea made by Li Mafei's third wife, someone came to see him. Divine Dr. Duan, there's a patient we can't handle. The visitor was Li Dakin, who could be considered Mo sect elder Li Mafei's uncle. Li Dakin was different from Li Mafei. Though his position in Mo sect wasn't low, he rarely participated in power struggles. Or rather, he was only immersed in his own affairs. He was not only well-versed in the crossbreeding of cows and donkeys, significantly contributing to the appearance of Mo sect's cow-donkey hybrids, but also proficient in medicine and architecture. After Li Mafei's death, it seemed like his support had collapsed, and in any case, he and Duan Yun were enemies. After all, Li Mafei was his relative. But in fact, Li Dakin didn't care much about this. He achieved his position in the Mo sect purely through his own efforts, and his relationship with Li Mafei was very ordinary. After the fall of the Mo sect in Wangchun City, he didn't flee like the others, but instead stayed with great interest to observe everything. He loved watching animal crossbreeding and also enjoyed watching people. He found Old Demon Duan and his Jade Pearl demons to be a group of very interesting people. When the river digging project started, he stood up, expressing his ability to help. Yes, in Li Dakin's eyes, there was no hatred between forces, no doorframes to block. If Old Demon Duan let him do in-depth research, then Old Demon Duan was his boss. You have to know, in the Mo sect, although he was considered a senior, even just trying a similar experiment would have been met with disgust from those above many times. After all, within the Mo sect, money opens gates to supernatural powers, and he wasn't skilled in social interactions, so things naturally didn't go smoothly. He made his mark during the river digging project, and later due to patience, when Duan Yun wanted to organize the Hero Medical Workshop, he was the first to express his willingness to join. The Hero Medical Workshop paid for work, but not much, yet Li Dakin didn't care about this. What he wanted was practice. And at the very beginning of the Hero Medical Workshop, he didn't think much of Duan Yun. Yes, in terms of medical skills, nobody in Wangchun City dared to claim first place above him. Those whose medical skills didn't surpass him didn't deserve to be called doctors. They could only be called pseudo-doctors. Back then, Old Demon Duan was also in the pseudo-doctor list. After all, a mere gynecologist who practiced some evil skills. Was he even worthy to be called a doctor? Until he witnessed Old Demon Duan's methods of saving people, especially that time during the river digging accident when he brought back Wang Matzi. Back then, Wang Matzi was obviously drained of chi blood, his whole body shriveled, and even he couldn't come up with a solution. Yet Old Demon Duan transfused blood from a death row convict into him, and afterward used finger strength to open up his blood veins. Latterly, not only did Wang Matzi not die, his energy increased significantly, supposedly because that death row inmate was a body-refining martial artist who loved eating sweet potatoes. Later, Duan Yun even used the power of thunder and lightning to stop bleeding and reconnect limbs, which made Li Dakin concede. He had to admit Duan Yun was indeed a divine doctor. Yes, anyone below me doesn't deserve to be called a doctor. Anyone above me is a divine doctor. This was Li Dakin's principle. From then on, Duan Yun became not only Li Dakin's boss but his idol as well. It must be said, The old fanboy, despite his age, was indeed skilled in medicine. Duan Yun was after all part-time. During the busy times of Duan Yun, Li Dakin carried the banner of the Hero Medical Workshop. Now that Li Dakin had come, it could only prove that the patient's injury was extremely severe. Even the top doctor of the Hero Medical Workshop couldn't handle it. If the top couldn't handle it, only zero could be called. Duan Yun followed Li Dakin towards the medical workshop, and on the way, Li Dakin already started explaining the patient's symptoms to Duan Yun. The internal and external injuries are all very severe. There's a cut on the abdomen, the large intestine was ruptured. I stitched it up, but there are some strange metal fragments inside. They seem to be absorbing blood, and my eyes can't see clearly, can't clean them completely. Then there's the arm, it was whipped, directly twisting the hand's veins and blood vessels into a twist. Good heavens, when I cut it open to have a look, it was like a dead knot tighter than my wife's belt ties. And more, there are 2 finger strikes on the back. The internal organs are severely hurt, plus his bird is gone. Only a burst scar remains, should be an old injury. To be honest, it's a miracle this guy can live till now. Hearing this, Duan Yun already grabbed Li Dakin's left foot, stepping on his right, rushing towards the medical workshop. Duan Yun developed quite an interest in this patient. In the medical ward, 8 doctors were gathered around the patient's bed, discussing animatedly. Outside were some doctors of lower status peering in. When Duan Yun and Li Dakin came in, the doctors, inside and out, quickly made way. It couldn't be helped. Under Li Dakin's influence, there was always an atmosphere in this Hero Medical Workshop. That was, doctors who weren't proficient in their skills could only be ruthlessly humiliated by those who were. And Duan Yun and Li Dakin, aside from their other identities, were the most skilled doctors here. The first reaction Duan Yun had when he saw the patient was that of a mummy. He was wrapped in bandages, his face as paper and gold. When Duan Yun unwrapped the bandages, he found Li Dakin's description was quite accurate. This man surviving till now was in itself a miracle. The first thing Duan Yun dealt with was his internal organs injury. Because like the intestine injury, it was fatal and more likely to cause death. Zzz. Electricity began sparking at Duan Yun's fingertips. Upon seeing this scene, several old doctors couldn't help but want to shout, "Martial artists, get out of the doctor's circle!" There were many sects practicing both medicine and martial arts, and the divine doctors of the Jiangzhong sect also practiced martial arts. Yet these doctors believed that with hard work and research, their future might not be weaker than those divine doctors. But this divine doctor Duan Yun gave them a headache. What kind of doctor came rattling with electricity at their fingertips to cure diseases? They felt they just couldn't do it. It felt like, while they were practicing medicine, Duan Yun was cultivating immortality. This time, Duan Yun's fingertip thunder was fine as a needle. The advance was slow, just inching its way through. Because the internal organs were inherently very fragile, he had to slowly adhere them together. After Duan Yun dealt with the internal organs, next came the intestines. For the intestines, Duan Yun exerted more force. The fingertip sparks crackled. In his own words, it felt like welding with electricity. During this, many doctors were twitching their noses due to the electric scorching of intestine flesh. They felt there was a smell of fiery large intestines. Duan Yun squinted his eyes slightly, also seeing the metal fragments mentioned by Li Dakin. Those metal fragments were embedded in this man's intestines, like parasites, causing the flesh to shrivel. Beiming divine skill. Since the intestines were patched up solidly by him, Duan Yun began drawing out the metal fragments. After a while, metal fragments floated on his palm. These things were truly troublesome, injuring this man's intestines again in the process, but eventually, they were resolved. The most life-threatening issue was resolved, and Duan Yun and the other doctors all let out a sigh of relief. Next was the less deadly arm. But Duan Yun quickly found out this was the most challenging. This man's arms were thick and strong, showing signs of martial training. From the knuckle marks it was clear. His fist technique had reached a certain level. But the veins and blood vessels in his arm were too tangled. A tangled mess didn't even begin to describe the chaos. They twined together, many reaching near the breaking point. Seeing those layered knots, many present, Duan Yun included, felt an impulse to grab some scissors and cut them open first. Because these knots genuinely tested one's manual skills, patience, and intelligence. Those with regular intelligence honestly couldn't untangle so many complex knots. Luckily, Duan Yun possessed extraordinary wisdom. With his fingertips imbued with soft strength, the chi force, like winding round fingers, gently started unraveling these knots. During the process, bold tolerance and carefulness were naturally required, or else blood vessels were very likely to snap. However, Duan Yun wasn't too worried. His fingertip thunder already had the ability to reconnect blood vessels, just not too many at once. Round and round, round and round, the knots within this one's arm veins and blood vessel were steadily decreasing. Duan Yun's expression remained consistently calm. Because with extraordinary wisdom's blessing, this was just a hassle, not a difficulty for him. But at this moment, his brow suddenly furrowed. For as he untied one of the knots, a sudden surge of power shot out. The power of thunder and lightning? Pa pa pa. The electric spark was demonically red, unexpectedly shooting out, biting down on Duan Yun's finger. Duan Yun's finger sword energy clashed with the lightning, directly breaking it apart, and the red lightning fell to the ground, surprisingly forming the shape of a mouth. Old Demon Duan, the day of accumulated thunder shall be the day of your burial. To commemorate my first love, good star rage. At this point, the red electric light transformed into something like a snub nose, then disappeared. Almost everyone present was frightened, except for Duan Yun and Li Dakin. Earlier, the red electric light had broken the patient's blood vessel. Duan Yun was seriously remedying it, while his eyes were cold. This young hero dislikes being spoken to in such a manner. And Li Dakin, wiping what few hairs were on his head, excitedly said, "What was that just now? A monster. I've always wanted to capture a monster for crossbreeding." Inside the Hero Medical Workshop in Wangchun City, aside from Duan Yun and Li Dakin, everyone else was scared stiff by the suddenly appearing talking red lightning. Two slightly chubby, bearded male doctors were even directly scared into peeing their pants. Immortal, monster, divine retribution. There are often rumors in Wangchun City nowadays about Duan Yun, mostly suggesting that giving grain and silver to the poor is a crime against nature, and he would soon face divine punishment. Now, this divine punishment has come too swiftly. In just a few months, have gods really come to capture the demon? Yes, that talking red lightning is definitely the work of celestial beings. The group of doctors was in a state of distress. They were just doctors, would they be affected? Others get paid to treat patients, but treating patients here is asking for their lives. Asking for their own lives. Only Li Dakin was quite excited, talking about wanting to capture the monster for hybridization. Li Dakin had a philosophy that everything could be hybridized, the success depending on the depth. The Mo family's ox-donkey hybrid was created this way. Seeing Li Dakin's excitement, Duan Yun also became interested and said, "Are you really interested in this kind of thing?" Li Dakin exclaimed with excitement, "Of course I'm interested. If I could do research on this, I'd even be willing to be your star fury." Duan Yun teased, "At your age, you're dreaming big." Li Dakin quickly explained, "Everyone knows that only beautiful and captivating heroines or daughters of famous artifacts are qualified to be your star fury. I was just expressing my desire for the monster." Duan Yun had probably guessed who the instigator was and said, "What if it's not a monster, but something even scarier?" Li Dakin asked, puzzled. "What else could it be? An immortal?" Duan Yun said, "What if it's really an immortal?" Li Dakin's eyes turned blood red, saying, An immortal would be even better. If we could dissect and research an immortal, we might uncover the secrets of immortality, and everyone could become an immortal." At this, Duan Yun's eyes also lit up. He was very interested in the idea of everyone being immortal. Not to mention everyone being immortal, if it could allow righteous and open-hearted heroes to possess similar abilities, managing and expanding heroic land would be much easier. Yes, if we could really discover something. But regarding this immortal, Duan Yun pondered, it might not necessarily be an immortal, Perhaps it's an alien. Lee Dakin blinked and asked in surprise, "What kind of people?" Duan Yun explained, "For instance, people from the moon, people from the stars." Lee Dakin responded, "Wouldn't that be an immortal?" Then, he looked towards Duan Yun, saying seriously, "Divine Dr. Duan, are you really planning to capture an immortal?" Duan Yun shrugged and said, "They've already issued a challenge. How can I not capture? Alas, these things only know how to bully honest people like me. Just for this thought, the entire family of this celestial being must be evil. They must be exterminated." Lee Dakin hurriedly said, "Divine Dr. Duan, as long as you can capture one for me to study, regardless of life or death, I'm willing to do anything. To start with, I waive 10 years of salary." Yes, after all, Duan Yun is a person who respects talent. Whether Lee Dakin was building dams or helping manage this hero medical workshop, Duan Yun had always paid him. And now that Lee Dakin is giving up even his salary, it proves he's genuinely interested in this kind of thing. And for progress in this martial world, such people are indispensable. However, this kind of research fanatic is prone to going off track and needs guidance from someone like him. For instance, when Lee Dakin once planned to hybridize humans and pigs, Duan Yun felt it was against human ethics, so he only allowed him to do it with death row prisoners and pigs, and that too had to be showcased live at the market to deter criminals. This is also why many people in Wangchun City with murderous and nefarious thoughts don't dare to act recklessly. After all, the Jade Pearl heroes are extremely narrow-minded, and even if you fled 1,000 miles, you'd be dragged back for trial. It's rumored throughout the martial world about how some crazy blade or great king fist met their end in Wangchun City. This damnation of living is worse than death. In the martial world, all one seeks is face. At this time, Duan Yun had just begun wrapping up the treatment of this patient. The patient's injuries were severe, though his life was saved. His hand didn't need amputation but was still crippled. Because those few whip forces were truly sinister, clearly a 5 consecutive strikes move, carrying that red electricity, resulting in severely entangled veins and blood vessels in this person's entire arm. Even though Duan Yun relieved them, the state was half ruined, and even his electricity couldn't activate. This deepened Duan Yun's resolve to annihilate the entire family of the culprit who issued that message. It's widely rumored in the martial world that if young hero Duan wants you dead by midnight, living till dawn is a crime. Similarly, if he wants to save you fully but can't because of certain things, it's tantamount to opposing him and offending him. Duan Yun has always shown kindness to people as long as they're kind to him, but if the other side isn't, there's no point keeping them alive. Just now, the words from that red lightning and the finally forming upturned nose shape reminded him of a sect he had already extinguished, the Thunder God and Mother sect. Especially those 2 phrases from the opponent, "Old Demon Duan, the day of the amassed thunder is the time of your doom," and "to commemorate my first love good star rage," further confirmed the opponent's connection to thunder. Could it be words left by the heavenly Thunder God and Mother? It must be said, transmitting sound through electricity does indeed have a touch of divine miracle, even he can't do it presently. As for the first love good star rage inside, it's probably the Thunder God and Mother sect leader he killed, that ugly idiot with a snub nose. If that's the Thunder God and Mother, choosing such an ugly fool as Star Rage can be truly considered the work of evil demons that destroy aesthetics. Even if it's an immortal, it's an evil god, destined to be at odds with such a handsome young hero like him. Yes, even now thinking of the ugly look of the Thunder God and Mother sect leader makes Duan Yun sick. Especially the fact that they forcefully twist ugliness into beauty, oppressing those who are attractive. It's disgusting both mentally and physically. Can these ugly little fairies all die out already? If the Thunder God and Mother wants to support such little fairies, I'll show you that even the immortals' fathers can be killed. Maybe this thing isn't even an immortal. To say that Duan Yun isn't at all nervous facing such a mysterious and unknown phenomenon would be a lie. After all, judging by their various manifestations, it all seems very much like an immortal. But to say he was scared, that's not true either. It's not only because he possesses extraordinary wisdom and unmatched talent, but also because the other party has already shown their fear. If they really wanted to kill him, they would have done it directly. What's the need for these roundabout tactics and waiting until the thunder day? Isn't it just that they don't dare to do it usually? And the previous incident with the Source Palace noble only made him more disdainful of this immortal. If even an immortal coming to the mortal world can be violated by martial world's demons, then it makes perfect sense for an evil god descending to be slain by a young hero as heroic as him, doesn't it? Whether it's the Moon Palace fairy who came down prior or the currently possible thunder god and mother, Duan Yun doesn't quite regard them as immortals but as aliens. The reason Duan Yun thinks this way is because he understands science quite well. The divine iron falling from the sky, the dream speech transmitting cultivation techniques in the thunder, and the markings on the thunder listeners that resemble another civilization's text, all align with the characteristics of aliens in the rumors. If Earthlings can defeat the three-body people, isn't defeating an alien whose power has greatly diminished after coming to Earth quite a reasonable thing? Thinking this way makes the story of the Moon Palace fairy falling to the mortal world and being forced to have children, as well as the Thunder God and Mother Star Rage being killed and having to hold their temper until Thunder Day, quite reasonable. While Duan Yun was contemplating these things, suddenly, a hand grabbed his wrist, only to see that the patient had lifted that wrist at some point, shouting, "I want to be a hero." Witnessing this scene, the doctor nearby was so scared that he sat on the ground, exclaiming, "Ghost! Possessed!" Meanwhile, Duan Yun looked delighted and said, "This disabled hand can be so strong. Even while being unconscious, he can shout the slogan, 'I want to be a hero.' Shows he's a good seedling. The more good seedlings like this, the better the heroic land will become." The patient was Li Kuan. He is still in a coma, yet there is still a chi in his heart. Lightning 5-chain whip. What a vicious whip. But I rely on fate, not the heavens, as a Li Kuan. A coward doesn't die, nor does Kuan Xia. Listening to this, Duan Yun realized this fellow isn't just a good seedling, he also got some complex elements. So he told the person beside him, "Watch over him. Call me when he wakes up." Yes. Afterwards, Duan Yun went back. Looking back at what just happened, Duan Yun was still a bit excited. If the Thunder God and Mother was an alien, did my old man just cross paths with aliens? As expected from this young hero. Since capturing Lei Ying, there hasn't been any worthy opponent to challenge him in the martial world for a long time. If it wasn't for the Source Palace noble appearing halfway, it would have been like he was just farming. This is indeed a complex martial world. Tending the land well requires great strength as backing. If there aren't good opponents constantly stimulating his potential, even a young hero would regress. Just like some grandmasters in the martial world, who dared to fight bravely in their youths and gained fame, but rarely met a proper end in their old age, either being killed by their disciples or imprisoned, losing even their own children. That's because they gradually degenerated amidst a life of debauchery. The physical degeneration is a minor matter, but what's more serious is the decline of spirit, like a tiger with its teeth pulled, and then the disciples just happen to grow new teeth and covet your wife and property. Isn't that how it ends badly? That's why there's always a saying in the martial world, people from martial world are like a bird flying without feet, only able to sleep in the wind out of exhaustion, because when it hits the ground, it's their death day. It all exemplifies the involuntary nature of the martial world and serves as a reminder for martial world people to always strive for advancement. Even on the verge of old age and death, one must still maintain that spirit and die with remaining way. And as for this situation, Duan Yun has his own considerations. He will grow old, but he doesn't fear this sort of thing because he already has a plan, which is to kill all the evil demons before he grows old and weak, severing all their lines, sparing none, leaving only good people, decent heroes, and his own kind so he won't have such worries. Yes, that's also the reason he established the heroic land. A place where a hero can have dignity, and good people can end well. Now that an evil demon sought trouble, it's a very good thing. Because he's still young, it's the best time to sharpen his sword. On heroic land, I'll be waiting for you. Duan Yun looked at the clouds in the sky and said. Suddenly, his extraordinary wisdom flashed, and he thought, coming to find me on Thunder Day, from this infer, where is this guy most likely to hide? In the clouds above. You plan to come find me on Thunder Day. But this young hero hasn't excluded the possibility of finding you before that. At this time, he had just returned to that golden chair to drink tea when the Morong brothers got the news and rushed over. However, not long after Morong brothers arrived, before they could figure out the situation, Duan Yun had already stood up, casually grabbing some pastries and a water pouch, looking like he was about to head out. Morong brothers asked, "Where are you going?" Duan Yun said, "Looking for someone." "Where to look for someone?" "In the sky." "In the sky." Before the Morong brothers could respond, Duan Yun had already left foot on the right foot, heading towards the sky. Duan Yun flew very fast. In the blink of an eye, there was only a black left in the sky. The Morong brothers were shocked and said, "You're really going to the sky to find someone?" Then he excitedly said, "This guy can't be looking for a fairy without bringing me. Damn!" Hogging it all to himself. Seeing Duan Yun fly farther and farther, almost out of sight, Morong brothers were immediately provoked. "Going to find a fairy without bringing me is just looking down on me for not knowing how to fly. You old demon Duan can fly, while I, Morong young hero, would be any worse than you?" Saying so, Morong brothers also stepped with left foot on right foot to fly up. After taking off, seeing Morong reaching only 20 meters before hitting the door and plummeting back down, envying Duan Yun going higher and higher, Morong lay down on the ground. But then he suddenly had a flash of inspiration, lay on the ground, and in a moment was climbing up with both his hands and feet, going higher and higher, occasionally exclaiming, "Turns out nothing can stop me." Thus, when Duan Yun looked further and further away, everyone in the residence went from silently watching to witnessing a genius. "Is it true you can actually fly this high?" Duan Yun continued to fly upward. Although he had long since mastered the technique of stepping with his left foot to rise, its speed was slowing down. The air was thin here, and with it came coldness. Such conditions wouldn't trouble a martial arts master like him much, nor would the thin air. Because it's similar to being in water, for a master like him, he naturally carries within him a pure inherent true qi, ample to support him. Additionally, he can also breathe through his skin. After quite some time again, in his perception, the clouds were already within reach. Duan Yun looked up at the clouds above his head and found that they weren't as ethereal and unreal as they appeared from below. They seemed strangely tangible, even evoking a feeling of being small when faced with a giant object. Duan Yun thought for a moment and continued to step on his left foot to rise upward. Meanwhile, Morong brothers hurried after him after regaining his bearings from the short slip. To ordinary people, today's weather in Wangchun City is clear with clouds, but not many. But in Duan Yun's eyes, the clouds in the sky today are a kind of giant entity, so vast and enormous that even ancient beasts can't describe them. Even he feels a sense of oppression and fear. Yet there is also excitement. Excitement for the unknown. Duan Yun even doubts how many people in the martial world, from ancient times till now, have flown this high to take a look like him. The next moment, he stepped with his left foot on his right foot. His figure swayed, and he was already immersed in the clouds. These clouds should be cumulonimbus clouds, and once Duan Yun entered, he felt the heavy moisture. It didn't take long before he was completely soaked, and his vision was very limited. Honestly speaking, this feeling is very oppressive, even more so than underwater. In the middle of it, he could feel the clouds moving, carrying the moisture within them. Duan Yun didn't have any particular goal, so he wandered through the clouds. This was his first time truly feeling the vast space of the clouds. He felt as if he were lost in a cold and clear world, making him feel lonely and fearful. Several times he couldn't help but look back, having a constant feeling that something was following him. He didn't know if it was an illusion. In such unfamiliar and low-visibility environments, people do tend to have illusions. The movement of the clouds made Duan Yun wonder if there was some gigantic creature within them. Indeed, such vast and thick clouds might nurture life, like a dragon, if the conditions were right. Duan Yun had seen dragons before. The azure dragon that descended over the graveyard left a lasting impression on him. Could such creatures exist in these clouds? This is also why, in many legends, Dragons always appear when clouds are thick and rain is heavy. Duan-Yun didn't know how long he had been roaming in his cloud because here, he couldn't perceive the passage of time. Just when Duan-Yun wondered if he would ever make it out again, he suddenly heard a sound. Yes, it was the sound of someone talking. Duan-Yun stood still in the cloud. A feeling of hair-raising fright arose. Someone? He didn't think anyone else would venture as high as him, let alone coincidentally reach this patch of rain clouds. If it wasn't a person, then what was it? Soaked to the bone, Duan-Yun felt a chilling coldness. The sound wasn't loud, like someone with ill intentions whispering insidiously. No, listening again, it didn't sound quite human anymore. Rather, a kind of spirit or monster imitating human speech. Duan-Yun wiped the accumulated water from his face, continued stepping his left foot on his right foot, and moved in the direction of the sound. Whether it's a human, ghost, god, or alien, this young hero must see it clearly. This should be the deep part of the cloud, where the moisture felt even more intense, and Duan-Yun felt as if he were in water, floating inside without needing to step his left foot on his right consistently. At this moment, as he drifted toward the sound, he felt like a ghost phasing through the clouds. One cannot deny that listening to this indistinct voice, Duan-Yun felt both nervous and thrilled. One could say that men naturally have an adventurous gene, which is why many in past lives explored haunted places. Excitement is indeed a kind of drug that keeps one energized. As Duan-Yun drifted, he suddenly felt something amiss. Because although he was always approaching the sound, it seemed to remain as distant as before. Before he knew it, he might have already followed the sound for quite some distance. At that moment, Duan-Yun remembered certain ghost stories where demons love to mimic human voices, even impersonate the voices of your loved ones, luring you to certain places and devouring you once you get close. Duan-Yun was approaching the sound on his own initiative, so naturally, he wasn't afraid of that. The moment he stopped, the source of the sound also seemed to halt, continuing to emit that monster's imitation of human speech, not too far nor too close. But Duan-Yun had just halted for a second before he launched himself like an arrow towards the direction of the sound, at an extremely fast speed. The clouds parted into a turbulent hole as he charged. A buzzing sound, like the wings of a giant bee, and something flew toward his right hand, moving at an extremely fast speed. Duan-Yun followed, also moving very fast. Yet, in the next instant, Duan-Yun couldn't help but squint his eyes. He emerged from the cloud and regained the light, temporarily feeling a bit unadapted. At that moment, it was very difficult for him to trace that thing again, because the human-like voice had disappeared, as if it were an illusion. Duan-Yun was certain that these clouds were indeed not empty, but had something within them. He didn't continue exploring inside. One reason was that he discovered that in such an environment inside the clouds, his hearing and pupil power still needed improvement, especially the pupil power. If he couldn't see further, as if using a spotlight, it would greatly affect his exploration, like how he lost track this time. Of course, there was another more important reason. He was hungry. It should be about mealtime now. Exploring in the clouds is a big undertaking. It's not something that can be fully explored in one day, and one must eat properly. So he decided to go down for a meal. Duan-Yun drifted down from the sky, his body wet and cold. After coming out of the clouds, he found not only frost on his brow but even a thin layer of ice on his clothes, crackling crisply when touched. The day hadn't even turned dark, and his exploration within the clouds hadn't lasted more than a day. Yet it felt as prolonged as several days to him, because in the clouds, people feel too isolated and lonely. That feeling of being a mere speck in the vast ocean can drive one insane over time. Even now, floating downwards under the sunlight, the sensation of extreme loneliness, as if the whole world has only oneself, is severe. Only upon seeing the outline of a town on the ground, and people like ants amid the field, did this feeling of loneliness begin to ease. At this time, it was dinner time, and smoke was curling up around Wangchun City. Watching these wisps of smoke, Duan-Yun finally felt like he had truly returned to the human world. The smoke and fire of the human world are most soothing to the heart. This sentence is vividly exemplified here. Duan Yun overlooked from above, originally deviating a little from Wangchun City, but as he floated down, he managed to correct his route step by step. Just as he leaped over the city head and descended, a strong voice rang out, "No flying is allowed in Wangchun City. Come down and accept your punishment." Below were two patrolling constables, one old, one young. This voice came from the young constable. The old constable then realized, quickly going to cover the young constable's mouth. For someone who flies in like that must be a master. Calling out like that could be dangerous. Meanwhile, Duan Yun had already landed in front of the two. Duan Yun, who had just returned from above, was soaked from head to toe, with quite a few strands of hair standing up. Although his face was still handsome, he also looked like a madman. Even though the old constable had seen him before from a distance, he couldn't recognize him as the new boss of Wangchun City, Duan Yun. The martial madman is most terrifying. The old constable immediately said, "Grandmaster, please don't take offense. My apprentice is new here and disturbed you. Please forgive us." The young constable couldn't help but say, "Master, according to the rules, this—" "Shut up." The young constable's words were forcibly cut off, and at this point, Duan Yun took 2 steps forward. The old constable hurriedly stepped back 2 steps, while the young constable still looked at him. At this moment, Duan Yun brushed a hint of fingertip thunder through his hair, smoothing it, and revealed a harmless smile. Smiling is useless. According to the rules, there must be a fine. The young constable said sternly. Duan Yun stopped his playful smile and said, "I know, according to the rules, the fine is 2 taels. Saying that, he honestly took out 2 taels of silver and paid it up. The young constable looked at him and asked, "What's your name?" "Duan Yun." Duan Yun answered honestly. "Remember not to do it again next time." Duan Yun nodded and said, "Certainly." It was only then that the young constable let him go. After Duan Yun left, the old constable broke out in a cold sweat, while the young constable just realized and said, "How come this guy has the same name as young hero Duan?" Duan Yun, having paid the fine, was quite happy. Wangchun City currently lacks nothing but talent. And that young constable just now was a good seedling. The flying ban in Wangchun City was a rule he set because, when he first took over Wangchun City, he noticed that most murders and robberies were related to flying. These people's movement technique is superb. Not to mention ordinary constables, even young heroes trained in martial arts could not catch up with them to punish evil. Thus Duan Yun directly banned flying. Anyone who flies is fined, then interrogated, and interrogation often yields results. There were vicious criminals who counter-killed on the spot trying to escape, only to be intercepted several times by Duan Yun and his team. Later, she still fell down, only now her head was her head, legs were her legs, and bear was bear. At the time, half the city saw the scene, and everyone was petrified. After that, there were fewer people daring to fly recklessly. At the same time, the number of criminals also decreased. Duan Yun initially banned flying in the city to show his stance and measures, whether dragon or tiger. Arriving in the heroic land meant playing by the rules, no messing around. Unexpectedly, it was truly effective. It can only be said that professional habits are indeed a kind of habit. Like a person separated from a familiar environment and losing a familiar limb, even the toughest might become docile. And Duan Yun just flew in the city and was fined, which suggests the flying ban is quite effective, and that young constable is also a righteous and upright good constable. It was now dusk time, and Wangchun City was still bustling. The liveliest place was a shop front at the street corner ahead, with quite a few people lined up peering inside. Duan Yun couldn't help but be curious and asked, "What's so delicious in the city?" In the next moment, he heard the sound of a whip. They saw a woman wearing a tight skirt and holding a whip, one foot planted on a man's face, lifting her hand for 2 lashes, making the man howl in pain. "Pass by and do not miss. Good days make one uncomfortable. Fierce whips and stinky feet bring you back to the days of cattle and horses. 3 chien of silver per time. Relive the old dreams." Saying this, the woman took off her boot, stuck her foot into the man's mouth, and again lashed twice. "My turn." My turn! The people in line shouted excitedly. Upon seeing this scene, Duan Yun was dumbfounded and exclaimed, "Isn't it something good to eat?" Upon inquiry, he learned that after the autumn harvest, many people inside and outside Wangchun City caught an illness. Heartache. This is their first time experiencing the unfamiliar discomfort from not paying the protection fees for food they've received or from doing business. And the woman in front of them seized the business opportunity, specifically whipping people and forcing them to smell her stinky feet, which gave them the feeling of being under the MO sect again. As one man in line put it, "Don't underestimate this whip or the stink of the woman's feet. It makes your whole body feel at ease. Brother, want a few more whips? I need to make sure this woman gives me a double dose." Duan Yun had no strength to retort for the moment. Duan Yun walked all the way to the Hero Mansion, which used to be Li Mafei's estate, and before he reached the entrance, Ning Qing anxiously found him. Seeing her, Duan Yun asked, "What's wrong?" "Murong is hurt," Ning Qing hurriedly said. "Who did this?" Duan Yun said with a serious expression. Duan Yun knew that the couple had been frequently pursuing evildoers lately. In Wangchun City, is there really someone daring enough to hurt Murong brothers? Are they ignoring his presence? Moreover, is there really someone capable of injuring Murong brothers in this area? Ning Qing gritted her teeth and said, "He hurt himself. Just hurry and come with me to see him." Duan Yun quickly followed Ning Qing to the Hero Medical Workshop. As soon as they entered, they heard Murong brothers cursing. Duan Yun entered and was surprised. "How did this happen to you?" Murong was lying in bed, his crotch wrapped in countless layers of bandages, raised high. Murong, teary-eyed, said, "I don't want to talk about it. It's embarrassing." Duan Yun took his pulse with one hand and said, "Speak up. Don't hide your illness." Then Murong, looking pained, said, "Didn't I see you flying away? I suddenly had a flash of inspiration and flew too. The higher I flew initially felt fine, but later on he got scared. I had never flown that high before, and I felt a bit dizzy because I couldn't catch my breath, then started falling down. Midway, with my astounding talent, I managed to adjust my chi but only to slow down my speed. It was too late to stop, and damn it, there was a tree right ahead. My legs spread, and I chopped along the tree. With my substantial true chi and exceptional talent with my second brother, a big tree should mean nothing. But damn it, there was a protruding granite beneath the tree. Duan Yun, he could imagine Murong's scene of chopping the tree and crashing into the granite. Ning Qing quickly said from the side, "Duan Yun, quickly help him. He's always had poor kidneys. Just pressing his foot makes him faint. How much worse is it now?" Murong quickly said, "Ning, I am iron kidney, it's nothing." Duan Yun nodded, "It's fine. Ning Qing, you go out first. I'll take care of him properly." With a worried face, Ning Qing closed the door. As soon as the door closed, Murong started frothing at the mouth and grabbed Duan Yun's hand, excitedly saying, "Brother, there were too many people outside. I held my breath. My injury is serious, and my kidneys are a bit weak. You must save me." Duan Yun couldn't help saying, "Relax, no matter how severe it is. I can make sure you regrow the limb. Even if it's gone, I can make you a new one." Murong's eyes lit up, and he said, "Really? You can pick one from the death row inmates?" Duan Yun said. Murong was initially very excited, but then he realized, it's best to have the original, or else it'll feel strange doing anything later. Laughing, Duan Yun flicked open Murong's bandages with one finger. He didn't immediately treat Murong but said, "What's happening with your kidneys lately? You haven't been practicing Jade Sword True Understanding." Murong said, "Wasn't I having difficulty practicing before? Facing people every day felt weird, so I haven't been practicing much." Duan Yun said, "No wonder, this kind of thing is like rowing upstream. If you don't advance, you retreat. You can practice less, but don't waste it." Murong said, "I see. I'll practice properly from now on." At this moment, Duan Yun was already looking towards Murong's crotch. Murong didn't dare look. Since getting injured, he hadn't glanced at it once. He was just afraid. At this point, he couldn't help but ask, "Can it still be saved?" Duan Yun said, "In this situation, should we cut it off?" "Ah!" Laughing, Duan Yun said, "Just teasing you. It only looks bad." Morong suddenly perked up, proudly saying, "I'm truly gifted." That granite was smashed into a bowl-sized hole. Duan Yun, a bowl-sized hole, that's one tiny bowl. After Duan Yun finished treating Morong's injuries, the sky was completely dark. However, he had not yet eaten. This situation was partly Morong's fault, meddling with trying to chop trees like Tom, and not just any tree daring to challenge granite. But during the treatment process, Duan Yun also realized Morong's strength and his own. Morong may have managed to chop trees like Tom and slam into granite with a bird, but only suffered what seemed like severe superficial wounds. This indirectly indicates that he is a bit stronger than Morong, meaning he now possesses abilities that were once unimaginable. Before entering the martial world, he was still terrified of almost being kicked to death and worried about the future. But now, he has become known as a young hero and a leading figure among the Jade Pearl heroes, able to climb up to the clouds and have a look. He might even challenge aliens. Let's just say that 2.5 years after entering the martial world, no, he's been in the world for more than a Kuan year now. This time may seem short, but for Duan Yun, it felt quite long. This was because, during these 3 years, he had experienced many things and seen many sights. Similar to people. In childhood, time seems long because everything is fresh. As you grow up, time feels faster because many adult days are repetitive and no longer new. Yet this martial world continues to bring him a sense of novelty. Since Morong had delayed his meal, the duty of treating them to dinner naturally fell on Morong. The Jade Pearl heroes might be the rulers of Wangchun City, but they always lived simply, often cooking their own meals, sometimes buying some roast meat from Old Chan, and rarely dining in Wangchun City's restaurants. Simply because they feel the restaurant prices in Wangchun City are expensive. But since Morong was treating this time, the Jade Pearl heroes decided on a rare occasion to indulge. Morong complained, "Old Duan, why did you invite everyone?" Duan Yun retorted, "You're not going to be stingy, right? Fine, I'll ask your sister and the others to leave." Morong stopped him. "Let's not. When could young hero Morong ever lose face in front of women?" Thus, the Jade Pearl heroes chose Lei Batian restaurant in Wangchun City as the place for their meal. The restaurant, famous for its barbecue, opened just this year. Lei Batian restaurant has only 1 floor, but the roof is flat and there are several tables set up. After all, when eating barbecue, the main joy is the pleasure of eating openly, and dining under the sky is enjoyable. Hearing about eating barbecue at a restaurant, treated by Morong, female heroes like Feng Linger hurried to join. While not everyone had arrived, Duan Yun had already asked the owner to serve meat, lots of meat. First, a whole roasted lamb was served. Morong couldn't help but feel a pang of pain. Actually, as a young master of the Morong family, even during the toughest times, Morong was quite generous. For example, he gave Duan Yun the family heirloom gentle knife, which was quite valuable, just for 2 servings of Old Chen's roast meat. Now, Morong was actually wealthier than before, yet had become stingy. It couldn't be helped. These were habits cultivated through comparison. Duan Yun understood his mindset. After all, in his past life, he had experienced the plain wars of the takeout platform market. Back then, cheap milk tea delivery made him sick, and after the market war ended, everything seemed expensive. However, once the barbecue was served, and Morong had his fill of meat and wine, it suddenly seemed worth it. Truly, Lei Batian restaurant's ability to stand firm in the restaurant-abundant Wangchun City indicates some skill. According to the restaurant owner Lei Batian, his beef and goat meat are bred from snowgrass sheep and cattle brought from Laizhou. They're tastier than the local sheep from Yun State. In Laizhou, there are many grassland snow mountains, and the cattle and sheep grow up drinking snow mountain water. The meat is tender without a mutton smell. Of course, Lei Batian's snowgrass cattle and sheep can't compare to the purebred ones from his hometown, but the meat is certainly more tender than the local beef and mutton. The owner, Lei Batian, himself is a martial artist. The Flame Mountain beef ribs they're eating now have a story. The restaurant owner and head chef, Lei Badian, handles this dish personally. Before roasting, the beef ribs are beaten 88 times with a wooden stick using his family's secret skill, the broken soul stick technique, to let the stick force completely penetrate the meat, altering its internal structure, creating small cavities, making it more juicy and tender when roasted. Undeniably, the fiery roasted beef ribs have a unique flavor. During this half-satisfied state of eating and drinking, Duan Yun shared with Murong about his encounters that day. Feng Linger was shocked upon hearing about a man with red lightning coming from his arm, and the lightning could speak. "It's aimed at you." Duan Yun nodded. "Yes, it's coming for me. After all, we have old grudges, and this time it's likely something behind the Thunder God and Mother sect looking for trouble." As Duan Yun continued to explain, they realized that the rumored Thunder God and Mother might be descending. Rumor in the martial world says the Thunder God and Mother are celestial beings, occasionally issuing divine decrees to thunder listeners in thunderstorms, which is why the Thunder God and Mother sect follows the thunder. They had never heard of such a situation where the Thunder God and Mother were supposedly descending to destroy. The Jade Pearl heroes quickly recovered from initial shock and fear. This martial world is full of supernatural affairs, and many of them have already encountered the Azure Dragon on a moonlit night, Source Palace Noble, while Murong and Duan Yun have together faced paranormal events, such as the red-haired zombie. This more or less made the Jade Pearl heroes a bit scared of the supernatural. But in the end, these supernatural things weren't invincible. Afterward, Duan Yun mentioned his daytime visit to the clouds in the sky to check on the Thunder God and Mother. Feng Linger exclaimed in shock, "You really went up there to look?" Duan Yun nodded and said, "I went, but I couldn't find them. It was pretty cold up there in the clouds. I need to prepare well before going again." At that moment, Feng Linger and the others thought this was even more absurd than hearing about the Thunder God and Mother descending to Earth. After all, who in their right mind would think of actually going to heaven to settle accounts with the immortals? Even a lunatic wouldn't dream of such a thing. But when they thought about how it was Duan Yun who did it, it wasn't that surprising. This very much suited old Demon Duan's proactive style. After all, many times when enemies were still planning on dealing with and retaliating against Duan Yun, he had already gone to their homes and killed their entire family, saving them from the headache of making plans. But as for gonna find the immortals, that was still somewhat absurd. Old Demon Duan, does your courage have no limits? In any case, Duan Yun's story alerted the Murong brothers a bit. Things had been too peaceful lately, which made them too relaxed. This reminded them that the dangerous enemies still existed, and the Jade Pearl heroes had to continue working even harder. That night, after the group had eaten and drunk to their fill, they practiced martial arts until midnight before going to sleep, leaving little Ian, who wasn't qualified to sit at the table, utterly baffled. What exactly happened to this group that made them suddenly so diligent? The next day, Duan Yun didn't rush to explore the clouds again because his exploration the day before encountered a lot of obstacles. For instance, his vision range was very limited within the clouds, which entirely restricted his abilities. He decided to enhance his eyesight a bit. Early in the morning, Duan Yun went into the city. He planned to search for some manuals that could train his sight. As the most bustling city in this area, Wangchun City never lacked people and places selling manuals. When he arrived at the Martial Arts Friend bookstore, there were already quite a few people inside. The martial world is never short of people wanting to practice martial arts, so bookstores selling manuals always have customers. However, it was clear that those who came at this hour were not the well-mannered guests. At least, not in the eyes of the bookstore owner. "Hey, these unique manuals, if you aren't buying, don't just flip through them. And you there, old chap, just stick to farming. Your feet are all muddy, coming to see what manuals. Can't a farmer look at manuals? Even a farmer like me now has food and silver, and Duan Juxia was a gynecologist before practicing martial arts. So you want to stand shoulder to shoulder with Duan Juxia? Your stubborn mouth, if this were before, I would have spanked you by now. Go ahead, spank me. It's my first time, as long as you give me this manual. Dream on." This manual is a Kong Tong sect rarity. Not even 10 spankings would exchange for it. Listening to their conversation, Duan Yun started selecting from the shelf. Een May Bottle, Lord Shimon's Romancing Adventures. Maiden Sword, Immortal Chantian's Misfortune. Princess's Cellar Battle with Blood Moon Demon. What kind of bullshit is this? Duan Yun muttered to himself, looking at the titles on the bookshelf. At this time, the bookstore owner, unable to focus on arguing with the farmer, quickly poked his head out and said, "Brother, silent reading is the way of a true gentleman. Keep it down." Duan Yun looked at the entire shelf, and it was all similar books, so he just picked up Princess's Cellar Battle with Blood Moon Demon and Fei Fei Sword Rain, held them in his hand, and looked elsewhere. The bookstore owner, seeing that he seemed to genuinely intend to buy, softened his expression immediately. Duan Yun asked, "Owner, do you sell martial arts manuals? I want the real ones." The bookstore owner quickly patted his chest. "My manuals are the most comprehensive in Wangchun City. All are genuine." "Owner, you're really speaking. My martial arts friend is an old brand with a gold signboard, endorsed by numerous martial arts masters. Ever heard of Heavenly Cold Pond Leg and 4? That was practiced from a manual bought here." The bookstore owner couldn't help but puff up his chest with pride as he spoke of these. Duan Yun couldn't help but ask, "Do you have anything to train eyesight?" This time, it really stumped the bookstore owner. He had all sorts real, incomplete, copied pawn manuals of knives, guns, sticks, punches, and kicks, even sold some room technique books, but specifically for training eyesight he couldn't recall much. "Of course I do. I'll find it for you." With that, his figure leaped like a monkey upwards. It turned out there was an upper loft in the bookstore, which seemed to store miscellaneous items. As the bookstore owner leaned into it, dust kept puffing out. At this moment, more customers gradually arrived. These few went straight towards the bookshelf where Duan Yun was just reading. It was apparent that all three looked somewhat haggard, with a clear purpose, finding a book to read as soon as they arrived. Except for one. The man with dark circles searched the bookshelf for a long time and said in frustration, "Where did Princess's Cellar Battle with Blood Moon Demon go? I was saving it for the finale today." Upon hearing this, Duan Yun quickly pocketed the two books. At this point, the man was quite anxious and asked, "Owner, where did Princess's Cellar Battle with Blood Moon Demon go?" The owner, still searching in the loft, said impatiently, "Gone means sold. Told you to buy it if you like it. It's worth savoring even if paid for. Now you missed it." The man with dark circles looked mournful and lamented, "Damn it, Princess, how will I live without you?" Duan Yun was speechless for a moment, clutching the two books tighter. Seeing how haggard these books made them, he pondered whether he should buy them all, acting as a good deed and helping them quit. At this time, the bookstore owner excitedly declared, "Found it! Found it!" He climbed down from the loft, covered in dust, and handed Duan Yun a book titled Bedroom Eye Technique. "Bedroom Eye Technique?" Duan Yun asked with confusion. "A masterpiece of the Master of Flying Eagle Hand." It said the Master of Flying Eagle Hand, supposedly like an eagle himself, not only had extraordinary finger strength that left people ecstatic, but also had extraordinary eyesight. It said that after learning this manual, he saw everything in slow motion, thus able to perform better in bed, leaving women unwilling to leave. The bookstore owner spoke fluently. Duan Yun asked, "What did this Master of Flying Eagle Hand do?" Of course, a martial arts expert. His flying eagle finger was a supreme skill 50 years ago, winning the hearts of many female experts, thereby becoming a famed finger in Yun State. "You're quite young. Never hearing of him is normal." Duan Yun looked at the manual and said, "But this training eyesight, this is the Master of Flying Eagle Hand's rarity." Everything looked thrilling to him after practicing, and it said he practiced this technique through peeping countless times. "Do you want it?" the bookstore owner asked. Duan Yun hesitated for a moment and said, "Might as well. Judging by the description, it's not entirely unreliable. Besides, he could always improve it with extraordinary wisdom." The Master of Flying Eagle Hand's Rarity Bedroom Eye Technique, 100 Taels of Silver, new customer discount of 20% off, a total of 80 taels of silver. The bookstore owner said. Duan Yun said, "So expensive? Forget it." The bookstore owner said, "Come on, buddy, we're in business, haggle a bit." Duan Yun thought and said, 8 taels of silver. The bookstore owner almost jumped up. "Why don't you go rob someone?" Duan Yun nodded. "Then I don't want it." The next moment, the bookstore owner's voice rose like a wailing pig. "All right, sold to you." Early in the morning, Duan Yun spent 8 taels of silver to buy a secret manual. He initially thought he got a bargain, but after thinking it over, he felt he might have been cheated. This just shows that doing business requires shrewd thinking. Even with a 10% offer, they could still make a profit. What was the cost price of this manual, and is it even real? Of course, if it's fake, he could have someone check the water meter, use the excuse of selling fake manuals to heavily fine them, and extort some gold and silver from them. Young hero Duan is kind-hearted and broad-minded, but surely you can't cheat me. But as Duan Yun glanced through it on the road, he discovered that this manual was real. Not only did it have the methods for energy movement, but it also included annotations that didn't resemble a copied transcript. It's known that in the martial world, many martial arts manuals are handwritten copies, and copying inevitably leads to some errors and ambiguities, which is why some manuals can't be successfully practiced and some can even drive people mad. Duan Yun didn't expect that this manual seemed to be an original copy. 8 taels of silver for an original, even more genuine than a first love. Is this even right? Duan Yun couldn't help but recall the bookstore owner's introduction. The manual's owner, the Master of Flying Eagle Hand, was once a renowned master known for his fingers in Yun State. No matter how skilled this master's fingers were, they likely couldn't match his own. His fingers weren't just famous in Yun State, but renowned throughout the entire martial world. Having obtained the manual, Duan Yun quickly shut himself away. He wanted to seclude himself for half a day to fully comprehend the eye training manual and see if it could aid in his cloud exploration. As before, Duan Yun first skimmed the manual as a whole, skipping over anything he didn't understand, and combined it with his extraordinary wisdom to interpret it in his own way. But this time he misjudged. The manual was extremely detailed, with clear training steps. Any difficult parts had straightforward explanations, making it more comprehensible than a model textbook for Duan Yun. The last time he encountered such a situation was when he borrowed a classmate's assignments in primary school to consult. Had it not been for him, this well-practicable manual might have stayed unseen in the bookstore attic forever. Yet this manual wasn't some high-status artifact. Rather, the owner seemed rather unsavory. This was a cultivation manual devised for the Eagle Eye by the Master of Flying Eagle Hand. The reason the Master of Flying Eagle Hand practiced the Eagle Eye wasn't to immensely boost his power, facilitate traversing the martial world, defeat opponents, and rise to fame, but rather for peeping and bed scenes. In the words of the Master of Flying Eagle Hand, when he exerts strength with his fingers, he must always focus on the opponent to capture their weaknesses and attack decisively. And the place where he defeats opponents was often in bed. For heaven's sake, this Master of Flying Eagle Hand turned out to be making a living with his fingers, serving affluent madams as a gigolo. And he practiced this Eagle Eye not only for better observing and serving clients, but also to peep at skilled individuals performing those acts, summarizing and learning from their experiences. According to him, peeping presented numerous challenges. Often, due to environmental constraints, a good viewing spot couldn't be found. Even when one was found, factors like dim lighting or thin veils on the bed posed further issues. Thus, this room pupil eye was about prying clouds and seeing the sun, removing thin clothing like veils and other obstructions to see clearly and observe to his heart's content. It's said that after mastering the room pupil eye, the Master of Flying Eagle Hand's eyes sprouted dozens of stitches simultaneously, which he considered a badge of honor rather than a stigma. This person is utterly shameless, Duan Yun, holding the manual, remarked sarcastically. But it simply said, "There's no bad manual, only bad people." When such a manual falls into the hands of a righteous young hero, it turns from peaking to facilitating the pursuit and defeat of evil demons. Yesterday, in the clouds, his view was quite constrained, and he longed to pry clouds and see the sun. Since this manual was precisely what he needed, Duan Yun decided to practice it right away. He extended his left hand, pressing the knuckles against his temples. The next moment, he followed the manual's instructions, breathing 9 shallow breaths and 1 deep breath, guiding true qi to flow between the Bai Hui and temple points. Initially, Duan Yun noticed no change in his surroundings and wondered, could I be doing it wrong? According to the manual, it required someone with the physique capable of cultivating pupil power to master this pupil skill. But Duan Yun considered himself a once-in-a-million cultivation prodigy, lacking no physical attributes, and it was impossible for him not to succeed. Since he hadn't looked in the mirror, he was unaware of the changes occurring. At this time, Duan Yun's eyes were already emitting a ghostly blue light, with his pupils turning a deep shade of blue, complementing his handsome features. Probably, few women could resist his melancholic aura. Of course, under normal circumstances, if someone entered this dark room and saw a pair of glowing blue eyes, they'd likely mistake it for a ghost. Duan Yun found no significant improvement in his vision and felt it wasn't right. This minor pupil skill was explained so thoroughly. How could a young hero like me not grasp it? The only explanation was that the intensity wasn't sufficient. With that, his fingers applied more pressure, and he doubled the breathing frequency of 9 shallow breaths and 1 deep breath, causing the true qi to circulate between the qi points at more than double the speed. After maintaining this for half an hour, Duan Yun's eyes were dry, yet he didn't blink. At this point, a change occurred. The room Duan Yun was in had paper windows, and suddenly the window paper became much more transparent. Or rather, it took on the appearance of frosted glass.